Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Moreland Township Board of Commissioners, July 8th, 2025, stated and advertised monthly meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with
liberty and justice for all.
Commissioner, real quick before you do your intro, Commissioner Pace's iPhone 4.
Okay.
Number 4, not an old iPhone.
Right. Hi, Joe. Welcome. Just to let everyone know, the Board of Commissioners, the board met in executive session to discuss a real estate matter with our solicitor. Those who cannot be here physically were on the phone with us. Thank you. Thank you, Ruth. And thank you, Joe for signing on with us. We had a presentation for commendations for Jack Bernstein and Judy TRICHON from the library. That will be continued due to weather. The first item on my agenda is review and consider the minutes of June 10th, 2025. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments regarding those minutes?
Yeah.
Ruth?
Nope.
Okay. Joe? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve the June 10th,
Second.
2025 minutes. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion's passed. Next.
Leah, did you send an invite to Joe to unmute?
Okay. Okay. Should we go back?
No, we have one.
Okay, it's okay, because Joe. Next, review and consider July 2025 bill list. We're in receipt. Thank you, BJ, for that comprehensive bill list. Do the commissioners have any questions or comments?
I have one question, comment. For telephones and internet service for the buildings, how often do they get reviewed? And where are we on the contract? And is that something that we typically look at? And I apologize if we looked at it in the last year since I've been here and I'm not remembering that.
So we probably haven't. Really, our options are between Xfinity and Verizon Fibers. So we can take a look to see, because we probably haven't overly looked since we implemented that service.
Yeah, and I didn't add up where the spend is, but I guess I'm just shocked by each building, like whether it's Public Works, the administration building, the firehouse, the police station. They seem like they're all individual type things, and if I don't know how often we should look at it, but maybe we could look at it to see if there's better bundles or what we can do to.
Sure, we'll take a look.
Is there any way to negotiate that into our contract when we're doing authorization on those for government services?
So the only things provided through the franchise agreements is the TV service for like being an actual business customer of theirs. That is not how those agreements have ever been done. So we can check to see if there's something that we have missed over the years for the number of facilities that we have. But overall, since that's our internet and our kind of individual phone service, correct, right? So
yeah,
phones
the entire township's phone network, including the police. So, and that's all a voice over IP. So the internet itself is just like the service provider.
Right.
But our entire phone infrastructure for the administration, public works, and police are all tied to that. So it would be one pretty massive update. But our phones, I think the last time that they were updated were several years ago, and they have been coming to an age. So that's something that we did discuss briefly.
We had done the analysis at the time. This was when probably Maureen was the assistant manager, where our old phone system that was like 4 boxes on a wall downstairs was now kind of fully obsolete. So we compared like going out to different like phone system vendors, and the cost to just have the monthly service through Comcast was far less than using one of those types of systems. So I think it would just be confirming that still is the thing that makes sense.
And I guess I think that's great, and that if we can take a look at it, but I would also challenge the amount of phones that we have. I know we need a certain amount of hard lines certainly for the police, certainly for the fire, certainly for the township, but if there's other phones and they're bundled together for other lines, like office phones, with Teams, Zoom, cell phones now, I would just ask that we look at that to say, what phones do we really need? And if there's a way to tighten that up. Doesn't happen.
My pen just exploded.
Wow.
Some points, and we'll definitely, yeah, that's, yeah,
And especially if it hasn't been for a little bit.
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Commissioner Mueller. Ruth, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Commissioner Page, Joe? Anyone else?
No.
Does anyone from the public have any public comment? Anyone on Zoom? I see none, okay. Make a motion to approve the July 2025 bill list.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Motion's passed. Next is the administration report. Manager Hoffman.
So 3 quick items that I wanted to call out from my report. First two are fire related. So the first is that we had a meeting last week with Solicitor Rice to discuss the nonprofit incorporation of Fetters Mill Fire Rescue and a corresponding relief association. So we are continuing to make progress on that. We'll continue to vet that through the Emergency Services Committee and report back any progress here. On the firehouse specifically, immediately after the board had appointed CHA as your construction manager, within a week, they had out the RFP for architecture services. So we are targeting the end of July, early August to interview probably 4 or 5 of the architects who submit proposals and aiming for an August 12th appointment. So that would build out the remaining component of the professional team for all of those services. And last, as we do review things that are kind of processes that have been in place, Leah has reviewed different platforms for our communications strategy that we have from the township level, incorporating the things that we do today across admin and police, and then taking a look at a couple of other more like app-based or emergency services-based systems. So we will have an update for the board shortly based off of recommendations and cost review from that.
Thank you, Manager Hoffman. Does anyone have any questions? Manager Hoffman. Ruth, Joe?
No questions.
Okay. Would anyone from the public like to make a public comment at this time? Anyone on Zoom? Okay, you're none. I will accept your report as submitted. Manager Hoffman, next, we have our Assistant Manager, EJ Lee's report. EJ, is there anything you'd like to highlight?
The only thing I'd like to share is that we did hire a new sewer and stormwater billing clerk who started a couple weeks ago. Currently working on the current cycle bills to go out. I think electronic bills went out already and paper bills will go out this week. And yeah, that was the only thing. And obviously the trash bid is on the agenda, which is a big item.
Great. I also saw on here, besides the grants and whatnot, that just to let everyone know, the summer recreation program EJ advised it kicked off June 16th, and it's been progressing successfully at the helm of Matt Gallagher, who is the summer rec director, and there are 113 registrants this summer. The kids are having a nice time. So thank you, Assistant Manager EJ Lee, for your report. Does anyone have any other questions for Assistant Manager? And
No.
any public comment in the room? Anyone on Zoom? Okay, hearing none, I will accept your report as submitted. Thank you, EJ. Thank you, Chris. Next is our tax collectors report. We have our elected tax collector, Jane Sale, online. Hi, Jane.
Yes, good morning.
Hi, Denise. Thank you. So for the collections for the township taxes, actual collections stand at 94.78%, collected $6,689,501. Base collections stand at 96.55% for a total of $6,814,868. The outstanding balance for taxes is $243,388, and trash stands at $39,550. And just as an aside, in case anybody is looking for it, The school tax bills were put in the mail yesterday. So prepare yourself. Any questions?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jane, does anyone have any questions for Jane?
Nope.
Anyone have any public comment for Jane in the room? Anyone on Zoom? Okay, thank you, Jane. I'll accept your report as submitted. Thanks for the update. Next is my liaison report. The positions, they are Lower Moreland Township School District, Lower Moreland Township School District, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee, and the community events. I attended both school board meetings in June. They are currently on recess for July, and they will resume August 5th for their work session. I reported on it last month, and at their voting meeting in July, they approved their budget, as Jane's telling you, it's going to be showing on our bill, and also some capital improvements for their facilities. So that's that report. There's the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. The last meeting was in May, and we won't be having a meeting until the fall sometime. So we'll wait for Dr. Cole to schedule those in the school district. Under community events, I reported this last month. It's way in advance, but we're together working on our fall events. Talking about the trunk or treat in October. The moving under the stars is September 20th, and our fire prevention day. Chief Middleman had given me a date. It's October 11th. I'll send that out. Actually, Leah put up we have a meeting together with staff tomorrow at 3:00. Leah and I will be talking and Director Seaborner about a environmental workshop for the fall. So, does anyone have any questions? Okay. That concludes my agenda items for this evening. Chair recognizes Commissioner Mueller, Chair of the Community Development Committee.
Thank you, President Kurtz. I have 3 items on the agenda tonight. The first item is to review and consider a planning commission appointment. And I first want to thank Shelley Margolis for his service. He needed to resign from his position due to moving on, but we had some interviews with a number of candidates that were interested in the position. Through an informal conference, we decided that Lisa Fazio would be a good fit. Lisa has been a lifelong resident of the township, and she's an architectural engineer. I think she's going to bring a lot of experience to the board. I think she's worked in construction management, so I think she'll complement the other planning commission members. So her appointment, who she's picking up for the vacancy, will run through January 10th, 2027. And as such, if there's first any questions regarding that, any discussion from the board. Yeah, as such,
Is that Ruth?
Ruth.
What? I'm sorry?
Is there anything, Ruth? Would you like
No.
to? Okay, but we heard your voice up there. Thanks.
No, it wasn't me.
Commissioner Mueller.
Joe, any questions or comments?
No, Dennis, I'm good. Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 2518 appointing Lisa Fazio as Ward 1 Planning Commission member, commencing July 9, 2025 and ending January 10th, 2027.
Second. Motion's been moved and seconded to approve resolution 2518, appointing Lisa Fazio as the Ward 1 Planning Commission member, commencing July 9th, 2025 and ending January 10th, 2027. All those in favor, please. Oh, I'm sorry. We need public comment. Sorry, here we go.
Are there any comments from the public? You got it.
Okay. Motion's been moved and seconded to approve resolution 2518, approving Lisa Fazio as the Ward 1 Planning Commission member as described. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Okay.
Any opposed? I don't hear any opposed. No opposed. Thank you, commissioners. Motion's passed.
The next item on my agenda is to review the building efficiency report by Jill.
Hello, we had 79 permits, 160 inspections. We did a bunch of violation letters. We had a check-in with a oil tank issue on one of the properties. We had a pre-con meeting. The fire marshal and fire guys and us went out to Manor Care to check the fire system for them to open. We had some site meetings and the new fee schedule is started Monday, so we'll see how that goes.
Did they open to?
We gave them permission to open. I don't think like cosmetically as far as like cleaning and stuff, they're ready to get in there, but we're good with everything. So
Gotcha.
hopefully soon.
All right, sounds good.
I have, on looking through some of the complaints from the historic list on there, some of them are still pending, but some of them are months old. And I don't know if how often we update the list, or there were some things where there was actions. There was a couple properties where there was an action. There was a swimming pool, I think, with a fence that was required, and that was a couple months ago. And with a 30-day time period, how do we follow up or can we close some of those that have been?
Yeah, some of them are court, some of them just take a long time because we give extensions, so we can just update that better, but usually it's just because they need more time to fix stuff.
Yeah, and I guess maybe next month if we could update those, because some of
Yeah.
them, there's some 2020, like early 2024 dates on there, and in the notes, I think were a little bit outdated because it said there were some things that were done, but maybe they just didn't, it's still showing pending, and you know,
Okay.
if there's
Yeah, problem.
actions that they had for 30 days and now it's
Okay.
360 days, maybe we can just push them a little bit.
Jill, I have one question for you also. On the fees collected, I'm looking at it, and it looks like our total numbers are way up, but our revenue is down on the overall collection process. Do you have any clue on that? Where the
Well,
disparities
probably
coming in?
some double fees. I'm trying to think. Sometimes depending on NV, like sometimes we'll get a bunch of those, and because they're like new homes, they're a little bit higher. So like some months that makes us higher, and then sometimes it's lower. But overall, I can't think of anything. We haven't really had any commercial. Yeah, I'm not really
So
sure.
you're saying that because
The builder's type is the one where there's the biggest discrepancy. There's 78 year to date, last year 66, but fees collected 44,000 this year versus 59, almost 60,000.
so smaller projects for those building permits comparatively.
Right.
Just more of them,
Correct.
but smaller dollar amounts overall.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
We're only slightly off. If you look at year to date.
Yeah, we're up.
Those
on
aren't
the-
designed
Yeah,
also
they're
to
different.
remember so your comment is correct, but generally, we're not designing the permit fee to do anything other than cover the third-party inspection time.
Right.
So based off of it being July and being at $98,000, budgetarily, we were in a good place. But all of the individual fees are based off of the specific types of permits that we get, and those will change from year to year.
Yeah,
Right,
the
we have a
thing
bunch
that
of
was-
decks versus houses, like last year, this year, like a deck is way cheaper than a new house.
Yeah, but it looks like we're up overall almost by 50% in number of permits issued, where the revenue is down by
4,000.
about 2%.
Right, and it's because of the types of permits that are.
Yeah, it's just looking for clarity.
Any other questions? Thank you. The last item on my agenda is for a liaison report, and that's for the planning commission. They met on June 26th. It was I think a record meeting. I think it was 3 minutes long. So there wasn't much discussion. The second, my second liaison is Pennypack Ecological Restoration Trust. They met this past month, and essentially what's happening in the trust right now is they're planning for their 5-year strategic plan and land management. So that's an exercise that is that began about 2 months ago, which will be finalized in September, and that will be the next meeting. In terms of activities that they have planned, big one that's upcoming is the hayride, which tends to be a pretty big success, and that's on October 4th this year. That concludes my agenda items. I don't know if there's any questions on the liaison report.
No, that's not good. Thank you, Commissioner Mueller. Next, the chair recognizes Commissioner Pace, Chair of the Public Works Committee. Joe.
Thank you, President Denise. Item I is review and consider trash and recycling contract bids. Due to the lengthiness of this and all Chris's hard work, I'm going to give him the pleasure to explain the process.
Oh, great. So
Just be thankful we're not in Philadelphia
that is good perspective.
with their trash situation.
All right, so I'm going to try to do as simplified of a version of this. We have talked for the better part of a year with specific check-in points and doing a survey of the community, trying to advise everyone that there's going to be some balance between a reduction or change in the collection scope paired with an increase in the cost of those services. Your current agreement with Republic, and they've been our hauler for probably 20 years at this point, is expiring at the end of this year. And we started that agreement 5 years ago. So just the market fundamentally has changed in that period of time. So everything that we were seeing like leading into this process was knowing that those two things would need to happen. So ultimately, I think the board has a choice between two options this evening, and that's where we're pairing the scope of services and the cost to do so. So EJ put together a comprehensive bid packet and got pricing for our current program. And then the first change being from manual collection to automated on the trash side. And then we also always try to see pricing for the once a week collection to see how that pairs. So based off of the board's preference, you could end up with one of two haulers tonight. So the first is taking a look at the 2 times weekly automated trash. The pricing that we got for the manual collection was so high that that is not something that we're going to discuss tonight. So the low bidder for that is a company, AJ Blazinski, and they're a subsidiary of Waste Connection. The total 5-year contract cost for the trash and recycling side is $9,019,000 or $19,555. Then we also sought bids for yard waste, both from a weekly and a bi-weekly perspective. Blazinski remains the low bidder when we add that in, but their cost for yard waste collection was comparatively high. So the 5-year contract cost for weekly yard waste with them is $2,049,954. So what I take a look at, because there's other components of the trash fee that is collected that cover other parts of the program. So there's public works staff time for the composting operation. There's public works staff time because we do the curbside leaf collection every fall. And there's tasks throughout the span of the year that we have to do for those. So there's staff time related to that, as well as the e-waste program that we do, which is at no additional cost beyond that trash fee. So the estimated trash fees that I have put together are taking a look at the exact contract costs that we have received through the bid process, and then adding in the specific staffing components and other equipment costs that we have for the programs that we provide in-house. So if the board were to award to AJ Blazinski for that project scope, including weekly yard waste collection, you would see an increase in the trash fees from $350 currently up to a first year fee of $565. And this contract term is for 5 years and allows for annual increases. So the trash fee by 2030 would need to be approximately $645. So one thing that Steve and I talked about, having previously done the yard waste collection in-house with Public Works, was looking at the possibility of bringing that back in-house. If we do that, that's going to be a long-term consideration because there's a staffing component. We would be buying a new trash truck, and we would have an agreement with a disposal facility that would carry a tipping fee for the tonnage of material that we took to them. But the thing that we were pretty confident in was that with our staff and spreading things out across a couple of different funds and how they would be used, we could do yard waste again in-house with Public Works employees for cheaper than $2 million over a 5-year period. So that revises the trash fee necessary. If we would be looking at $565 in 2026, we think that we could do that for about $520 with Public Works in-house, and a trash fee that would cap at $590 by the end of the contract compared to $645. Ultimately, what I have projected for that is a certain tonnage times the tipping fee for disposing the material that we would collect. We would start setting aside a capital contribution to buy a new trash truck to be delivered in 2028. And we would hire 2 new Public Works employees. the public works employee cost would be spread out across the trash fund for the time that they actually spent doing the yard waste collection. We would also discontinue the contract that we have for mowing in the rights of way and in our parks. So the parks mowing component, we could put payroll into the parks fund. And then also because so much of what public works does is related to stormwater activities, we could do benefits and other things out of the stormwater fund and have the new employee costs spread across those three. I would be pretty confident sitting here today, but we need to clarify all of these numbers come time for budget season this fall. But that the current parks millage would be sufficient to take on a portion of these new salary costs. The stormwater fund would be sufficient to cover those costs. And then I've incorporated what should be the trash component into those estimated fees. So that overall, you're looking at about $50 less per year on the trash fee if we were to bring that service back in-house. So that would be still awarding a contract to AJ Blazinski, but it would just be for the 2 times weekly automated trash collection and the 1 time weekly automated recycling collection. Your other option is to change to 1 time weekly automated trash, but the rest of the programs remain the same. And that would not bring yard waste in-house. The pricing that we received from the low bidder on the once a week trash collection for their yard waste program was very competitive, and we would not be able to compete with that as Public Works. So the low bidder on this program scope is Whitetail, who's a subsidiary of Casella. And they have a 5-year contract cost for the trash and recycling side of $6,857,896. And then their weekly yard waste collection is $1,085,000. Their biweekly is $621,000. So comparatively, this comes along with a reduction of service. Same amount of trash would still need to be collected, but it would happen once a week. And you would have a trash fee that would range, just going on the weekly side, we would need to go to $440 in year 1. Some of that cost is because we need to purchase the trash toters to deliver to everybody. So there could be a small reduction to $425 in year 2. And ultimately by year 5 of that agreement, you would be at $470. So $120 more than you are today. So we've tried to build it in a way that the board can determine its tolerance for both scope change or reduction, as well as what the cost would be to do that, all of which are higher than they are today. But that is simply what the market has dictated and kind of played out exactly as we were anticipating that it would. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Commissioner Pace to facilitate the conversation for the board.
So do any board, Chris, thanks for that lengthy discussion and nailing down exactly what the options were in all your work. I know you were back and forth with a lot of different contractors and options. And personally, I feel the increase to maintain the services we have minus yard waste and do that internally, I think that's a great option. Personally, when you get into totes and having big totes and having multiple big totes that are now 96 gallon, have to lug them up and down, especially the older people to get them with the automated system. I just think the cost saving isn't great enough to have trash switched to 1 time per week personally. I also think that utilizing different funds that spread across Public Works, being able to do it in-house for yard waste, I think that's a great idea. Overall, if you look at the final year of the proposed 5-year contract, it's up about $200 per year per house from the contract we signed 5 years ago. So that's a decade later to go up $200 per house over a 10-year span. I still think it's very competitive and a good option for us. I don't know what the rest of the board, if anybody else has any other opinions or thoughts on it.
Could someone summarize what the results were of the poll that we put out?
Sure. So I guess the 2 things, major things we would point out. Let me bring up, there's a longer memo.
There's no sound coming through.
Yeah, so 78% of respondents were comfortable changing to automated collection while keeping 2 weekly. Then it goes down to, it's really a 50-50 split of those who don't think that they could do a once a week collection. So really, as I filter that information, that number is higher than 50% of people that would be okay. If you lived in a community that did not have a municipal single hauler collection, if you're going into the market, the thing that you're getting is a once a week collection, and it doesn't include any of the other things that our program includes. There's a certain percentage of the 50% who say it would not be okay that we would probably never hear from again. So I would say that is a majority, but certainly understand people responded that way and do not want to see that reduction happen. So we do not want to discount that. The other component that I thought was important from the survey results, 56% of respondents utilize yard waste collection at least once a month, with 40% being at least every other week and 20% being every week. So based off of that, we did not suggest any reduction in that program. We do have pricing for bi-weekly, which I think only becomes relevant with the once a week collection, because if we're bringing it back in-house, we can simply make a judgment call with Public Works, what's out there and how much time do we need to spend, compared to needing to commit to a specific program cost with a hauler making a decision today. So I think those are the kind of the three relevant points that I would take away from the survey.
Thank you, Chris.
Oh, I'm sorry, go on, please.
Well, my next question is probably, I mean, I know the answer, but I have to ask it. There's no chance that Casella would be willing to do just the yard waste? I mean,
No,
Whitetail? I'm sorry?
So that's not how it's structured. The yard waste is a separate alternate, but they must be awarded based off of the kind of base cost and then add in an alternate. You would have the choice to put out a separate bid just for a yard waste contract, but I would not expect that they would be as competitive if you were to put that out independently, because there's lots of shared costs across each of the collection types.
Yeah, it had to be asked. Okay, thank you.
So I have a question. Can you explain? So we have a 5-year contract price, but we see increases and in some cases decreases, like the second year, and all of the bids would have a minor decrease, but then it would continue to increase. Can you explain why there's fluctuating costs? And did that come from us? Did that come from the bidders?
The fluctuating cost. So just keep in mind that the proposed trash fees are estimates that I did for the totality of the program.
Understood. There.
The individual bids that we received from each of the 5 haulers, it allowed for annual pricing so that we didn't have to take on all of the potential risk by putting a flat cost for each of the 5 years. So every bid that we received, the cost with the individual hauler gets more expensive in each of the 5 years. So the decrease is able to happen because we only have to buy the toters once.
So this is an aggregate. They gave you your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yep.
You add it all up. That's where we got to that. Okay. Correct. Understood. Okay.
And that plus the estimates for Public Works, staff time, other equipment costs that we would have, all of the things that go into the trash fund are all rolled up into that one trash fee.
So that means the rate of change. So the twice week automated trash by AJ Blozensky, as you may have said wrong, has a higher rate of change over that time period from 565 upwards to about 645 than the other one, than the Whitetail, which is 440 to 470.
Their annual increase.
That's their numbers that you computed.
Like, yes, because essentially I have a bid tabulation that shows the annual cost for each of the haulers, and the analysis for which one of them can be awarded is based off of the total contract cost. So like I guess that we could take away Blazinski starts out for the twice a week collection, starts out lower increases, I think at a 5% rate or whatever the number is, and you get to what the number is in year 5. Whitetail didn't bid on that at all. So you're only comparing to 3 other bidders for that.
They didn't bid for the twice week, but
Whitetail did not.
yes, I understand. Okay.
Did you have anything else?
I mean, I'll certainly share my perspective on things, but please go or ask questions you have.
So Chris, I have a number of comments. One, I appreciate all the work that you did on this, and I think it was terrific that we got some feedback from the survey, that we have an idea of what the community is thinking. So I appreciate all that. Not in any particular order. So if we decided to go with AJ Belinsky and we were bringing the yard waste in-house, what happens in the first 2 years? Are we able to start that in January, or is there a gap because you said that there's some equipment that's needed?
So we have an old trash truck.
So we can continue to use
So
that.
we would use that, and we would use the rest of this year to onboard new staff, do all the process that would be necessary to have the people available. Essentially, we start the collection in April, because February, March are months that are off.
All right, so okay. So we'd be able to start right away. We wouldn't be signing any smaller contract with somebody till we got ourselves up and running. We would live by initially until we got better, solid ground under our feet.
Right, and essentially the reason that we wanted to bring this to the board earlier in the year compared to usually doing this in the fall was that we knew that any change would require significant lead time. So if the board is comfortable to make a decision this evening, we feel like we have adequate lead time to get things up and running for January.
And you feel good about the numbers in terms of the savings bringing it in-house?
Yes.
So, I mean, my thoughts are, it's a change to go to automated service. It seems that's what everybody is doing. I did some, price shopping and I lived prior, 7 years ago, I lived in a community where everybody contracted their own trash service, and it was one time a week. I called a couple of these companies after I saw your memo, and I gave my old address and just to see comparatively what things would be, and the cost, 3 or 4 of them that I compared was actually higher than the cost that we have here, and there was no other option for twice a week, so it's a once a week. I think that from my perspective, I would like to see twice a week. I think the change would be too much. I think that if you miss it, if for some reason you're traveling or you get confused on the holiday schedule and you miss that one time, now you have trash piling up for 2 weeks. I'd like to see the twice a week service happening. Yard waste, I think that we have enough trees and we have storms that come through, and people may only use it once a week, but on nights like tonight, everybody's probably going to use it in the next 2 weeks as they're cleaning up their yard. So I want to see that continue. I like the idea of bringing it in-house. I think having more staffing available in public works for the tremendous amount of work that Steve and his crew do on every single item that we talk about. Those guys are there, they're setting up. So having extra set of hands to do more, whether it's snow removal in the wintertime. I'm guessing that these trucks that we'll buy, that we can probably put another plow on it. We have somebody else that can plow roads. With stormwater cleanup or stormwater, I think it's another option. So having the ability to have further staffing for crew that's already pretty proficient would just put us in a better spot. So I'm supportive of that. And that's how it comes out for this one. I think overall cost is still comparable to what you would be able to get if you were contracting yourself. It's actually a better cost. So I'm supportive of twice a week yard waste, recycling as we have, and bringing it in-house.
Few quick questions. Chris, was Bernathen included in both of these bids? For the twice a week and once a week?
Yes.
Okay. So we're still not sure if they're going to be included or not.
Correct. They ultimately have a decision to make.
So will that,
Change
change the numbers or anything for us?
So on the twice a week, no, the AJ Blazinski submitted a bid for both collection solo, Lower Moreland, and with Bernathen, and their cost was the same. I would have some follow-up questions for the solicitor if you were to go with Whitetail on the once a week, but then Bernathen got back to us that they did not wish to participate.
In the once a week.
Correct.
And once a week.
So that those numbers would change if that was the case.
Potential.
So Bernathen would only
So
possibly participate in the twice.
So this is.
Right.
So Whitetail only submitted for collection with Bernathen.
Okay.
during the life of the contracts that we have, the number of units changes because new developments come online. So I think this is the legal analysis that we would need to do. The low bidder for once a week collection without Bernathen is also AJ Blazinski. The low bidder for once a week collection with Bernathen is Whitetail. If we were to make a change midway through the contract, I think that changes the analysis, that if we were going to award something tonight that included Bernathen, it's Whitetail. And then we would see how the contract would play out over the life of those terms. But I do not have a definitive answer to that right now. The cost for AJ Blazinski at once a week is only slightly higher than what Whitetail put in. So your overall, if we had to go with that, I would essentially have to come back to the board for a request of a different award at the August meeting.
If we opted for Whitetail and then
Bernathen back down, I would need to talk to John about what our options were.
But a first choice though is once a week or twice a week. If we're
Really twice a week,
if we're agreeing with twice a week, then there is no choice.
Correct.
And there's no difference whether Bernathen is in or out.
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything is valid, right? I don't strongly disagree with any of the rationale for keeping 2 weeks, and if we were to keep it 2 weeks, I think bringing in-house, the yard waste in-house has a lot of additional benefits. So I buy all of that. When I look at this and I think about everything that the township is trying to do over the next couple of years, we have other big projects. We have other house we're trying to build. We have that whole system that we're still trying to like figure out what its final state is. This doesn't seem like the place to this seems like a good opportunity. Between 1 week and 2 week, there's a pretty considerable, not just cost difference. I mean, we're talking about 125 on the first year, but as we go out further, that expands to almost $200 difference, 470 to 645
Per household.
per household. Yes. And that's also a much more stable progression of costs, which for the other half of the survey who said they can go down to 1, I'm thinking probably more are the older members of our community who have smaller homes, who have smaller households inside, who don't need that extra service. For those who, say they do need extra service, I would wonder whether or not the totes, the larger ones, would provide them with the capacity that they're not used to having. I know I look around my neighborhood, most people in my neighborhood have smaller cans, so they have many of them. I have one single can, and that was just my personal anecdote, but I have one single can, and it is more than sufficient for once a week collection, even if I miss, right? Even if I miss one, I have to wait an extra half a week or a double week. So to me, I think it's worth looking at the big picture of all other types of increases we're considering and thinking about, and to wonder if this is a place where we have an opportunity to minimize that change over the next couple of years with, yes, a change in behavior, namely one a week. But one question that I have around this is, would we have the opportunity, and I don't know if this is something that we would be able to control or that Whitetail would be able to control, that if the household needed additional capacity, if they felt like they needed more than one tote in order to hold on to their garbage for that extra week or for the extra time it takes to pick up extra couple days, would we be able to issue them one? Even if there was a small cost involved, is that possible? Or is that something that we'd have to figure out?
Understanding that the switch to once a week would require some accommodation for certain families. We did put language into the bid to advise the haulers that it was possible that at a certain point, homes could have a second trash container. I think the way that we would recommend, if you go that direction, the way we would recommend rolling that out is that everybody gets their 96 gallon for January. Everybody uses the same thing for 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And see how it is, because I think a certain amount of that 50% will realize that it is sufficient.
Right.
Those that simply cannot make that change, we fully intend we would have a stock of additional toters that somebody for our cost could purchase one, as long as it was one of the township ones, and add that as a second container, so that you would have additional flexibility if you're generating more than other families.
Yeah.
Any of these kind of individual particulars, we can talk to our experience with Republic because they've been our hauler for 20 years. There's the drivers get to know the community, and you get to kind of develop certain flexibilities. The conversations that I've had with each of the haulers who are low bidders, I think we very much have the opportunity to work on some of those specifics. One, because we put that language in the bid, and two, because they're trying to do a good job based off the bids that were submitted. That we could work with the hauler and with the family to try to do that. If it's 3,000 homes, I think that's going to be a problem. If it's 100 homes, I think that's far more within reason.
And why is that a problem?
At a certain point, the way that the overall contract was developed is the starting point of 1 per home.
Okay.
2 automated collections is not a lot of extra time in front of the house, but if we don't know yet, we have to, whoever you select, we then need to meet with the hauler and determine what is their schedule going to be, how many times will they be in the community, how many trucks are they bringing in. Those sorts of details start to become relevant if you have 1 toter in front of every house. Say hypothetically that the hauler wants to be there 1 day a week. We're gonna do the entire township for trash and recycling, just kind of flood us with trucks once, 4 days off. If you are going to more houses with 2, that is increasing the amount of time that you're at each house.
Sure.
If they're here 4 different days and they have a lesser responsibility on any one given day, I think that would have less of an impact. So it's just the next phases of that, I think, would determine what kind of flexibility we would be able to offer people. There's only so much of that you can build into the bid process, where we try to be as specific as possible, but also leave open certain flexibilities.
And just to make sure I understand this correctly, the current recycling cans that we have, those are 96 gallon, correct?
64.
Those are 64, so they're even larger
Yes.
than our current recycling cans. Okay, all right.
And Chris, for once a week, would they flood the township? Or we would have trash, like whatever day they would pick, that would be everybody in the township would have the same day pickup, or is it staggered the way it is now where there would be multiple days? How would that?
So I guess that hasn't been finalized. And the initial conversation was thinking to try to do 1 day. And then that would give flexibility. Say hypothetically Tuesday was the day selected. If you have a weather issue, if you have a miscollection issue, you would be able to address that later in the week. But all of those specific details as the routes get developed, each hauler is bringing us kind of a slightly different product based off of, are there employees that are hired just for the Lower Moreland contract? If you're going to once a week, those employees probably do collections elsewhere. So those details, really filling them in, all follow tonight's decision. And we don't have full specifics on that yet.
Yeah, the reason I asked the question is if you've ever driven through Abington on their once a week pickup day, it could take you a considerable amount of time because there's just literally trucks everywhere blocking every road. And so it creates a little bit of a traffic issue if it's one. So,
But it sounds like we don't have any control of that. Like theoretically, twice a week could do the same thing, just twice a week.
And I think when it comes to control, like we are going to have a collaborative discussion with the hauler about what works best for them and what works best for us, and try to marry those 2 ideas.
Chris, did each hauler, the Belinsky for 2 days a week and the Whitetail for 1 day a week, because people that are either empty nesters or the elderly, they don't like those real large cans. Are they willing to size down, say, per request?
So again, the township is providing the toters, so we would be purchasing the stock of 64s and 32s like we do for, right now we do a 32 option for recycling. So we would have a stock for trash as well, after we would deliver the initial 96. I think for somebody that says, hey, this 96 is just too much for me to like physically handle, that one I would say we could replace immediately, compared to asking people to, hey, try the once a week for the first 3 months, and then we'll be able to assess. Because if it's just somebody's physical limitation, I personally have a 96 trash at home and a 64 recycling. It's a few pounds more, it's a little bit bulkier, but they're overwhelmingly similar. But yes, our intent and in the cost that we have built in for that first year of purchasing the toters gives us stock for Public Works to be able to swap them out for people.
And I don't know if Steve or you, Chris. So we're looking at if we took care of the yard waste in-house and hired two employees, about how much time, I mean, we don't know, we don't have a crystal ball, but you think that would take, a day, 2 days? just trying to
Yeah, I
wrap
think
my head around the whole thing.
For the public works side of it, it's gonna be a matter of just how much material is out. So I think we would try to build in 2 days, and
Okay.
that should be sufficient if we, and that's the nice flexibility. If it's our equipment and it's our people, we can just adjust for what the week calls for. Based off of the amount of material that's out.
And then the other 3 days, Steve could have the extra help at Public Works Department.
Right.
Are
The
there-
extra hands.
Are there toters for yard waste collection as well? Will we be getting like green cans or whatever color they choose?
No, but right now it would follow the same collection parameters that you have today, which is either bundled or put into a 32-gallon container,
Okay.
or bio bags is the best word.
And I'm sure you're very uncomfortable doing this, but if we look at the fact, like at the rate of change over these 5 years, and sort of just looking at the progression of costs, should we expect that when we come to 2030 or 2029, we're doing this again, that we're going to see continued rate of change is going to continue to go up? It's that this rate of change could be relatively consistent. Again, I know you're not an expert in this, and this is the first thing we've done in a long time, but just to help us understand, like, again, I see that price change and I wonder, like, will we see that same price change over the next?
So I've done the bid process since I got here in 2010. The first one that we did, then we were actually able to reduce the trash fee. Then the next contract, we added yard waste to it and we're able to maintain the same trash fee. And that stayed in place for like 9-12 years. And then for the most recent contract, we increased to $350 to get through the life of those 5 years. I'm sitting here today, just everything that we do, I would never set an expectation that anything will ever get cheaper again.
Unless by 2030 we have driverless trucks.
Love it.
Yeah. So Chris, possibly, with us bringing just, trying to take a really good look at this, the yard waste in-house, the numbers, could the numbers possibly change? Because right now our residents are paying $350. So the difference now would be, a little less than 200 between the 520 for the 2 times a week automated, 1 time weekly recycling, and the Department of Public Works taking on the yard waste. So there's like $170 difference. A little higher than what we're currently paying. We were fortunate that we had that hauler for a pretty long time and we had great pricing. So could it possibly be lower? I know this is an estimate.
Possibly not in any meaningful way lower, but say things that we look at, we don't know yet exactly what the tipping fee would be for the amount of yard waste we dispose of. So if that comes in lower, I would be able to reduce my estimate. Another factor is going to be the public works contract is settled through 2026. 2027 is one of the every 12 years, I believe, that we have 27 pay periods. So that also increases things for 1 year before we go back to the next 11 years of being 26 pay periods. It's just when you do a bi-weekly payroll, that's how that plays out for hourly employees. So we would be nitpicking $5-10 off of that number. So I would not view that as anything that's meaningful to talk about this evening.
For the yard waste, can we ask Republic for what the annual, because they have those records, would they share that with
So
us?
we based our records off of the actual amount of material collected.
Yeah.
The difference is us going in as the hauler needing a tonnage per ton rate compared to Republic going in as the second largest company in the country.
Got it.
So whether or not we have the same ability is different.
I have another just clarifying question. So we're talking about residential. So how do these services interact with number one businesses, but also apartments, namely like Philmont plants when that
They do not.
so they do their own thing.
They have to provide their own separate collection.
Okay, which means they pay no fee to
Just one other question to make sure I'm on point. So the 1 time a week, doesn't matter which hauler it is. Burnett is not interested in 1 time a week. You said they're only interested in 2 times a week.
Going to
Hear that
suggest-
correctly?
So I can't say tonight.
Right, but
So answering this question is a very challenging spot for another municipality that has not fully made that decision.
Okay,
Their direction when I talked to Jeff Elson on June 26th was that their preference was for 2 times a week collection, but they would follow the township. And then ultimately they did wish to participate. As is often the case with the things that we are dealing with, despite the amount of lead time that I provide everybody on all of these decisions, we often are dealing with them the day that the bid is about to be advertised or the day that we are recommending an award to the board. So there's a possibility that Bernathen does participate. There's a possibility that they do not. If we go to once a week, we're going to have a follow-up conversation how that would play out.
and we're not really sure right now how much the disposal cost would be for the yard waste portion.
Correct. We don't have specific quotes yet, but I've used what I believe is a high estimate on a tipping fee. So if we're able to realize a few $1,000s of savings, but spread out across the trash fee for 4,122 homes, it's not going to dramatically change.
So I've been thinking about this a lot and reviewing the numbers. I'm in agreement with Dennis and Joe regarding the 2 times a week. If you have a hot summer like we're having right now and the trash is sitting there and you miss it for a week, it's gonna stink. Your cans are gonna stink, you're drawing animals in, whatever else. And as we know, they're eating through the lids as is. I personally, I don't know how you do it with 1 can. I wish I could, but I'm filling 2 96-gallon cans when everybody's home in my house over a weekend at times. It's crazy. So with that being said, I'm in favor of 2 times a week with the DPW doing it. And the difference between the 2 times and a 1 time a week with DPW is what, $100 spread? So we're talking roughly $8.25 per month per household.
So whatever the math of $120 is.
But we can't think about these increases in isolation, right? We have other increases that we know we're doing, and then there's other stuff that we can't know that we're doing. And we also have another very large entity in this township, which is the school district, which also has things that they have to do. They have big chains in front of them. So we have to think big picture. Half of this community expressed that they can deal with once a week, and a large part of this community has no need to have multiple cans, right? There's a lot of elderly in the township. They want to stay here. We're trying to figure out if there are ways through long-term development to help people stay here. So I think that the consideration for if I forget it, sometimes it's going to stink, to me is don't forget to take your trash out, because that is asking everybody to pay a considerably more for a convenience that not everybody needs, and that a lot of people also express that they don't want to. But they don't have to have. And I get there's gonna be people on either side of this that aren't gonna get what they want, right? We have to make the decision. But in this case, the consequence of one versus the other is a considerable amount more money. For a lot of people, that is a considerable amount more money. And that is just one of many other things where we're gonna be asking them to spend more money.
The $8 a month can definitely add up, and I understand there's many other considerations coming, but the school board isn't our concern right now. We gotta focus on the public good here at the township.
I get it.
And what our constituents want and they're used to. They're used to the 2 times a week. It's been that way since I've been here.
Right. Used to that, but what they want, half wants one, half wants the other. So what the survey response said out there was, half said I'm okay going to 1, half said I'm okay going to 2. Everyone expressed that going automated was totally fine with them. And we are considering, I walked into this and I'm considering going bi-weekly yard waste. But I hear the needs, and we just drove through the storm to get here, and I get the need for making sure that we have an adequate way for people. Not everybody knows, has space to compost, has space to hold on to things. So I get that. I totally get that. And I'm willing to look at weekly yard waste as a result of that. I'm just asking the board to consider what is a larger cost increase, and also over a long period of time, a bigger rate of change, more money every single year that my families have to shell out for still getting a good service, still getting your trash picked up, still getting your recycling picked up. Everyone deals with once a week recycling. Everyone is fine with once a week recycling. It'll be a change of behavior, and then we'll all get used to it. Because I'm thinking in 5 years, we're probably going to have to make this decision again. we might have to go to 1 year because the costs are going to be too large for us to all handle. Because there's no reason to believe that these costs are gonna level out anytime soon.
I don't think they will. I agree with you.
Right,
So
so-
we're gonna see a constant increase right now, unless there's something AI driven, as Joe indicated online.
Yeah.
Maybe what the self-dragging trash.
Which
who
will
knows?
not reduce costs, will simply allow for more so, but that's a whole different discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I struggle with this too, because, fundamentally, I would like to say, hey, once a week, and I had once a week in years past. And there were many weeks where there was a mountain in the neighborhood, because, you look at the holiday week, you look at, 4th of July, Christmas, New Year's, like there's a mountain that's out there, across the board. I think that, there's, one of the things that we have to consider is, yes, there's increased costs across the board. And we're asking for a lot of change. And what I would probably, in 2 weeks ago, I was like, all right, how can we do once a week, right? How can we do? But I think it's too much of a change now. And, I would like to use maybe these next 5 years to, to help condition people to see, hey, could we really go to once a week? But when I see 50% of the people it's completely split, having trash pile up in Lower Moreland, I think would create a problem. We would hear a lot about it, to say like, hey, I had twice a week, now I'm at once a week. This is a big change. I hear what you're saying about the behavior change, and I think we need to push towards that. And I think that there's a lot of things that we could probably do as a township to recycle more, to do all those things that I think are the right things to do. But trying to push this through now and ask for that change and I get it, a couple $100 is still a couple $100. That is a lot to a lot of people. Certainly would be a lot for, my father, who's elderly, who lives in the township. Forcing that change now and having people not okay with it and have piles of trash in their driveway on a hot July day to say like, hey, I live in Lower Moreland, I can't get my trash picked up. Like, I don't want to hear those complaints for a couple $100. And what I would ask is, we're going to automate it, we're making some other changes. Maybe we can consider some things in the subsequent years to kind of try to push for what 5 years might look like, to try to get to a more, spot where we're at once a week. But I think it's too much of a change right now. And that's why I switched back to going to two times a week to say, let's not rock the boat too much right now.
Hey, Chris, could I ask something?
Yeah.
How many residents actually filled the survey out?
477 respondents.
Out of how many households?
4,122.
About 10%.
So 10%. So I talk to a lot of residents daily, and I know a lot of residents, like every other topic we seem to talk about, didn't even know a survey for the trash even went out, or that it was over the end of this year, the contract, right? And most of the discussions I had was, oh no, I moved to the suburbs to get my trash picked up twice a week. That is a huge bonus, and something residents that from my interviews and talk tos that they look forward to less piles of trash, right? So the survey of 50%, is it really 50% of the residents or 78% on the one item that once, twice a week? I would bet it's a lot higher than 50% if you put every resident in a room and ask them to actually take the survey, right? I'm sorry if I'm breaking up. It's a very bad storm where I'm at.
We're getting enough, Joe.
Okay. Yeah. So
I mean,
the survey was based on 10%. I would just add that I don't think that's a true indication of what the residents really want.
I mean, I think there's consensus in this group, or there's at least an agreement in this group. I would just say to that last point, like, it can swing the other way too. So I wouldn't question the quality of the survey, or we might as well just throw it all out and consider it all. And I would also say too, for people who aren't aware that our trash contract is coming up, that there's potential for change, they're gonna have the same, whether they had a reaction that trash only get picked up once, or they're gonna have a reaction that their bill went up by this much, like, they're gonna have a reaction if they're not tuned in, if they're not aware. So that's a whole separate issue too, and I'm glad we're gonna be talking about it soon, about different communication channels. But once again, I think we, I don't really get my piece, I've shared, and I've shared my perspective.
Chris, without putting you on the spot, and I don't know if you know, but just our municipalities locally, close by to us. Do you know, I mean, I know Abington is once a week, right, Steve? Yeah, my sister's in Abington. She doesn't tell me it's 2 times a week. Do we know how many, like, are people once a week, twice a week? I know Happer, they collect their own trash in-house.
Right, I think that there's kind of 3 major buckets. And we're probably the least normal. So the first big bucket is that the municipality collects. And when it's your own staff, obviously you're setting a schedule, but you have greater flexibility because it's your people. The second major bucket is the last bastion of American freedom, is to select your trash hauler. So that's the one that, Dennis, you were looking into in cold calling municipal companies to get quotes. We're, I think, this smaller group, but it has always made sense for Lower Moreland to have a single third-party hauler through the township. So I would, if I had to kind of guess at it, I would say that there's very few twice a week remaining. And I would imagine if you are in a community that you have to, on an individual homeowner basis, get your own contract, I would venture that most companies are not offering a twice a week option. So if you got out of the business entirely, and we just had residents call, I don't think that we would be able to maintain this program at all.
Yeah, I called around a bunch of places, and it's once a week. I mean, that's what you're gonna get. And, I think, I said, I won't repeat myself, but, I think that is probably but I think it would be a big change for the township at this point in time. And, I would strongly, and I was torn, but I think it's too much change. And I said, all right.
Well, I'm torn because I only have 3 people in my home. So my husband has the can crusher, and he makes sure, we're in big trouble. Like the doghouse, we're in the doghouse on the refrigerator. If we don't collapse every box, shred everything, and Leah brought in a workshop, I guess last year, was it last year? Or was it the year before? And that one was wonderful, informing us how to reduce recycling and trash waste and everything. But at any rate, I have all my neighbors, regardless of their age, asking me, can we put in your trash can or your recycling bin or whatever? So they have a heck of a lot more than me. So, but it's not about me or my personal, it's more about, what everyone would want. This is a tough decision, but I think the decision also lies in that, if we did go with 2 times a week, the potential for, if Bernathen wanted to, if their ultimate decision is, they would be a part of the 2 times a week. If we went to 1, they wouldn't want to be interested in being a part of 1 time a week. I think it is nice that we partner with a neighboring municipality, and I'm not, also, if it's 2 times a week, and the new employees wind up, collecting in 2 days, that does give Public Works an extra hand for, different projects. I mean, that's one department that has been understaffed for so long. Steve, how do you feel about having that extra help there for a few days? If, that worked out. So.
Just to clarify the Bernathen point, if they don't join us, this does not change these numbers, doing it with the in-house and us staying 2 days a week automated with the low bid haul right now, correct?
For twice a week, it's the same.
It's the same, doesn't matter if Bernathen's in or not, so take them out of the equation.
Right.
I think we've talked about it enough. I would like to open it up to the public so we can move on with this. Joe, you run it.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, any comments from the public? Mr. McDade's on Zoom. It looks like I can't see, somebody stood up in the boardroom. Somebody can control from there.
Yeah, so we'll take in the room first.
Got
just Up to, and then after that, we will go to Zoom.
You want to use this one?
It's not.
So for the record, Michael Verotti, 240 Barnsley Avenue. Can you just repeat, Chris, the numbers for once versus twice? Was it 9 million versus roughly 7 million?
Yes. So on just the trash and recycling component, the AJ Blazinski contract for Quite Limited is $9,019,555. You would add another $2,049,000 for yard waste.
Right. And
We can
then,
then take that 2 million off if we're spreading the cost out for public works, becomes less than that. The contract for the once a week collection is 6.8 million.
We lost the room.
For
Yeah,
yard waste component
We're breaking up.
weekly.
with Lisinski,
Blazinski.
that would be just for trash, and then we bring the yard waste back in house.
Yep.
It stays at 9 million though. That
The
doesn't get
contract
reduced by 2 million.
Yeah.
So I just quick math, I think we're saving like 20% by going roughly 20% savings, like 7 million. Versus
Did we
9
go-
million.
the difference between
Once a week versus
Yeah.
twice a week.
percentage, I do it.
Yeah, so I mean, to me, that doesn't really add up. I mean, to lose, half the pickup, right? You're losing 50% of your services, you only save about 20%.
Yes.
Just, I don't think the savings is enough to justify. The other problem is if you go to automated, fully automated, that means nothing left next to the can gets picked up, right?
That's happening no matter which one we choose. There's no manual option.
No, I understand, but right now. I
Yeah.
left 2 bags next
That's right.
to the trash can and it got picked up because there's somebody, so my point is that. There's still people leaving things next to the can that isn't gonna get picked up, and if you're gonna go to once a week. Then that's either gonna sit there for a while or.
Right, so this
There's a
gets
big
into-
behavioral change that's gonna happen.
This gets into certain intangible components that we can't speak to yet. So because of the experience with Republic, people who do not follow the collection standards often are still getting trash collected and recycling collected. We will need to establish that working relationship with our new hauler. But imagine there will be a good transition period where people are adjusting to the containers, but there's going to be a certain point that the hauler is going to want to push us to, if it's not in the container, we're not taking it. And what is the communication around that? So a major part of our communication and feedback from the haulers, how often is it happening and how do we address it? How do we get to the individual where it is happening? And right now, I would say in our contract with Republic, while they're very good at taking some of the extra things away, I think there's time, they're lacking in helping us with some of the enforcement side of it. So one of the things that we look forward to building with our next hauler, if it's Blazinski or if it's Whitetail, is better establishing how that communication happens.
And then I would just say regarding surveys, number one, it does a very small percentage of people responding. And then it still was 50-50. My experience with surveys is they're typically 50-50. And what happens is when you ask somebody and then you go the other way, they end up saying, well, what you asked me for, right? So they get a little offended, right?
You
So-
pointed out the issue with Representative Governor.
Yeah, exactly. So I think to Joe's point, Joe Pace's point, I think if you took a bigger sample, I think more people for the money savings would definitely lean towards staying towards. I know personally, I would like to see twice a week. Could I get away with once a week? Of course, you can make anything work. It's just gonna be a matter of, is it gonna cause, in the summer months, is it gonna cause an issue with, look what's happening in Philly right now. Not even a week on strike, and there's more trash than I've ever seen in my life. I don't know where it all came from, but anyway, for what it's worth, as a resident who did not know the survey went out and didn't take the survey, I would definitely vote for keeping it the way it is. So, thank you. Thanks for all
Thank you.
putting the time in. I know it's not easy.
Back to you, Commissioner Pace.
I think there's,
Yeah,
I think Chuck has that.
Anyone else in the room?
Go ahead, Chuck.
Thank you. Hey, Chris, did Republic bid at all?
So, if you recall from the build-up conversations, the reason that we built out the options the way that we did is because Republic told us they would not bid on the manual. They did bid on the twice automated and the once automated. Oddly, on the yardway side of it, they did not submit a bi-weekly, they just submitted weekly. And they were not the low bidder. So one of the things, and the longer memo that's in your packet, I did just compare what it would cost to stay with Republic, even though that's not really a legal option available to you. And it's about a $20 a year per home more to stay with Republic. So I don't want to make any assumptions about
You're doing automated or manual, Chris?
just automated because they did not submit for manual.
Gotcha.
So I don't want to make assumptions about what their analysis was. But they, after many years of kind of preparing that correctly within the greater scope of the bid, they did not this time. So there's not a path for you to select them. And I think just some of the general public communication rather than the survey, we did get kind of more positive feedback about Republic than I think what we often experience on the staff level. Because I think just generally the staff level, we're always going to see the frustrations. But it was nice to get positive feedback for Republic through the survey process. And particularly like comments about specific drivers and just some of the actions that they did. But unfortunately, that sort of anecdotal information isn't available to you to make your decision.
So the Board of Commissioners is obligated to take the lowest bidder?
Yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else on Zoom?
Maybe I should speak. I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that I have one person in my ward who's very upset that we still have 2 twice a week. And she has
Ruth, you have an
quite
echo.
clear. What?
You got an echo, Ruth. I can't even understand it.
Okay, I don't know what to do about that. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, could you put your volume up? Can it go up any higher, Ruth?
Or just get closer to it, maybe?
How's that?
It's a little bit better. I think I can hear you better.
Let me get my volume all the way up. Okay, I have one person in my ward who is continually yelling at me that we still have twice a week. She thinks it's a waste, and a lot of people who are very environmentally conscious are also upset that it's still twice a week. Because once you start, implementing environmental programs in your home, you do get less trash. And maybe even less recycling, but it definitely weighs more towards recycling the trash. In my own home, we only put out our trash once a week. And we do have adult diapers. So with the trash can closed, it doesn't seem to be that much of an issue. The smell or the volume. So, and then on the other hand, I'm sorry to do this to you, it's only an $80 difference. And I know that I should be looking at the whole thing as a whole, but between the 2 programs, it's really only about an $80 difference between once a week and twice a week. And I think most people in our town would probably say, oh, that's nothing. Let's do it. So.
I think I got what you said.
Yeah, I got it.
Somebody just.
Thanks, Ruth.
Yeah, it was just tough. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
That was good.
better.
That was perfect right there.
You came in clear.
It's really loud for me.
All right.
Anyone else from the public, either in the room, on Zoom? We haven't seen any hands raising or anything. Okay, Commissioner Pace, back to you. There's no one else that would like to make a public comment.
I didn't hear anything Bruce said. And I'm just being honest, the boardroom is very clear. If someone could just give me a cliff note real quick, or
She shared that her anecdotal evidence is that there are a lot of people who would like to see it move down to once a week. So to sort of counter some of the other anecdotal evidence of people who would like it to stay at twice a week, for a lot of reasons, they would like once a week. So there are two sides to the story on what people would like to change. But that ultimately, given the price difference between the two options, it sounded like Ruth was advocating for the twice a week in order to maintain that program with the price difference that there was.
Gotcha. Thanks, Ruth. Thanks, Sean, for relaying it. All right. Is there any other discussion back from the board members? Or any other comments?
No, Joe.
All right. I'd like to make a motion to award AJ Belinsky a 5-year contract for automated trash collection twice per week, recycle once per week, and public works handle yard waste.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded to award or Belinsky for automated trash collection twice per week, recycling once per week, and public works yard waste as described this evening. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Nay.
Thank you. Two.
Mhm.
One nay. We don't need a roll call or anything.
No.
Okay.
And I would just like to make one final comment. I would like to see us over the life of this contract to have additional communications and behavior change, because I think there's an opportunity in 5 years to we're going to want to go to once a week. So that to what we can do to help support, to move that. I think Mr. Berardi brought up a very good point in that, right now, a lot of people might have said they can go to once a week with the understanding that they can put out 5 or 6 bags once a week, which they're not going to be able to do. Maybe they get a second toter, whatever that is. But I would like to see more, maybe some township seminars or workshops that we can continue to move the needle in 5 years to get to where we need to go. And I think that's the right direction. But for all the comments, I think it would be too much change at this point. And quite frankly, for the cost difference, I wouldn't want to hear the aggravation of people complaining about their trash. We have too many other things to worry about. So.
Agreed. And Leah, you can reach out to that woman. That was wonderful. Penn State Extension, that zero waste living.
Yeah.
Maybe we can talk about bringing her back in. She was great.
Okay. All right. Next item on my agenda is J, review and consider authorization of bid Ramage run Basin retrofit. Engineer Woodrow is not in tonight. Chris, could you just run through this for us?
Absolutely. We'll give a second for the. All right, so this agenda item is bid authorization to begin the retrofit project at the Ramage Run properties that are owned by the township. So this is just the next project that we need to do for our pollutant reduction plan. You'll recall the one that was completed last year was the Longview Drive Basin. This is going to be the second of many of these individual projects coming back to you to implement the PRP as required by our stormwater permit. So what we are requesting this evening is authorization from the board to put this project out to bid, and then we can bring bid pricing back either in August or September. Tim pretty much has plans ready to go for this one. And then also just wanted to report on 2 separate project concepts because they're also part of this current planning process, but Ramage Run is further along. It makes sense that we can jump into it. So the first has to do with a basin upgrade at the Pine Road School. Our premise was to try to pick off any of the projects that are on public property. So that's why Longview on a lot owned by the township, Run, both lots owned by the township, Pine Road owned by the school district. So Mark McGuinn did distribute information to the school board members, informing them about a conversation that we had where the township would seek permission to come in, retrofit that basin, and then turn over a new operations manual to the school district and their landscaping contractor to maintain under the new parameters. So that is one that we will hope to follow with relatively soon. And then another is that Tim Woodrow and I met with members of the Ramage family, looking at a possible kind of major stream bank stabilization project for both the actual Huntington Valley Creek and a tributary to the Huntington Valley Creek along property that they own, being able to create a better vegetative buffer around the channel, and also pare back some of what has been eroded over the years. Both of those projects would make a significant impact in our VRP obligations. So we'll be bringing them with hopefully more specific details to you relatively soon. But for now, we are just seeking permission to bid the Ramage Run Basin retrofit project.
Any questions from the commissioners?
No.
No, Joe.
Anything from the public or on Zoom?
No.
All right. I'd like to make a motion to authorize bidding the Ramage Run Basin retrofit project.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded to authorize bidding the Ramage Run Basin retrofit project. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right. Next item on the agenda is K, Public Works. Steve, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Everyone has my report out.
Podium, sir. Joe needs to see you. Sorry.
He was hiding it.
It's busy. The only thing I'll say, paving is getting ready to start, should be the end of July, beginning of August is the time frame our contractor gave us. So we did hand out all the ladders. Everyone has the opportunity to trim some trees. If their trees, we'll go out and trim some of the trees, anything really overhanging. Most of the prep work is just about done. We're finishing up some handicap ramps on Welsh Road right now. And that's about it. Busy summer and keep on going.
What about Philmont Ave? I know I keep on asking about that.
Oh, that's
I think I
okay.
need
So,
some new shots by now.
So I think there's a little bit of argument between the PennDOT and Aqua on what's going to be done. The last thing PennDOT told me is they're paving that Aqua is required to pave the whole thing, the width. So I know they had to put the service lines in. They had a little trouble coordinating the line. Then they put the service lines in, which I think that is done now. And the base repair should have started in the trench, and then the whole width will be paved.
And I did have a conversation with one of our engineers from Bowman today, who was, I think, trying to fill in some of the disconnect between Aqua and two different divisions of PennDOT.
Right.
So he, based off of that conversation, he was going to try to facilitate. I think it's really a disconnect between District 6 and central office, giving feedback to Aqua for what they have to do. So that should hopefully turn this around, as Steve was saying, sooner than we had initially been told.
Based off that, what's a rough timeline that we might expect?
I would have thought they would have started by now. I don't know, I'm going to say beginning of August. But I think we're like weeks away now, so.
And what's that, about a 3-week project to go?
Nah, to pave that? No, I think a couple days.
Okay.
And at what
That,
point?
that stretch, but from Red Line to just short of Tomlinson.
Well, are they going all the way out to Philmont and Huntington, or are they going just from Red Line?
They're just gonna go from Red Line to. Yeah, just short
Short of
Tomlinson.
the roundabout project area, which that's the
Gotcha.
disconnect as to, I
Yeah,
think who initially provided feedback to Aqua was incorrect about what they told them they did or did not need to do.
Is there a point if this agreement continues that we can do at least something to just improve the experience until they're able to do?
So we don't own the road.
Yeah.
So what, I don't know what we would be able to do.
And that's what I'm asking.
I could just keep pressure on PennDOT and Aqua to get it fixed, and I call them together.
Is that something that, like, if we got state reps and all, is like that the direction that we would want to take
We-
it?
we can
Like,
go
is that
that
something we
way.
can potentially help with as a?
We have hopefully worse, so yeah, if,
I
yeah,
get at least one complaint.
right.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
get it,
Yeah.
get it, yeah. So I'm just asking the question, I just wanted to know sort of
Okay,
what.
I'll check on the timetable tomorrow and see if it's any better, and if it drags on, yeah, that's always an option.
Okay.
The last thing I'll say is we did, since we're talking about, we had a utility coordination meeting for the roundabout. So I met with Bowman, all the utilities were out there. We were out there obviously for our sewer lines. So that's moving on. That's another step in the project, but it looks like October of 27 is the start.
That's the current date.
Yeah.
Okay, cool,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Next item is my liaison HVAA. Baseball's basically wrapped up. There's a couple of teams and some tournaments spread out on the East Coast, really. Also, HVAA soccer, they have two teams, the Sting and the Stingers, who won the PA State Cup. Then they went on to pass through the regional round, and now they are heading to Tampa Bay next week for the Nationals. So it's two boys teams, the Sting and Stinger. So we wish them good luck down there, and hopefully they can win a national title. And that's all I have for HVA right now.
Thank you, Commissioner Pace. Next, the chair recognizes Commissioner Blanton, Chair of the Ordinance Committee. Sean.
Thank you, President Kurtz. So I have a number of agenda items on my report today. I'll start with a review and consider Act 172 Tax Credit Program Ordinance. So in May, we authorized advertising an ordinance establishing a real estate tax rebate program for volunteer fire and EMS personnel pursuant to EA Act 172. Solicitor Rice collaborated with Chief Showmaker on the ordinance, which has been advertised as prescribed by law. The ordinance makes any Lower Moreland resident volunteering for Fetters Mill Fire Rescue eligible for the rebate, as the first year for eligibility is proposed to be 2026. So we'll prepare the program parameters for the, or rather the program parameters are going to be prepared for the board to consider by resolution later in 2025. They're going to mirror the Montgomery County program that Chief Showmaker described at that May meeting. The tax rebate will be offered as a reimbursement to the volunteers after certain proofs are submitted and approved. Does anyone have any questions about the ordinance or any of the details thereof?
I do not. Joe, do you want to elaborate on any of that?
No, Sean covered it perfect.
Real quick, just
Can I ask a question, especially since I missed, can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes,
you
we can.
covered it right.
I took off the earbuds, just talking, I'm trying to hear you guys. I was not at the May meeting, but this, and I watched it, but this is just very broad, and then we're going to come up with the parameters that it will take to get the reimbursement. Is that, because it doesn't seem to have the parameters in here.
right. Yeah, so Ruth, the premise is that we need to create kind of the legislative authority for it. And then at one of your next meetings, we will have a resolution that establishes the specific program criteria.
Okay, great. That's what I couldn't understand. So thank you.
Ruth, the county already has this established with parameters, and we're gonna follow those same parameters. That the county has.
Okay, if you could tell us where to see those or get them, I would appreciate it after the meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's on the county website. They're out there.
And I
Okay.
believe it's in the agenda packet.
Yes.
If Mark's memo from the May agenda packet, I think details some high level stuff about how it works. But there probably is a better, like, full detail of it.
Yeah, well,
And we can distribute that before it's coming to you for consideration. John, one question I did want to clarify. I had originally written a memo saying that it would take effect 26 based off of the conversation we had. But the eligibility period in the ordinance that was advertised does say 2025. That there's a paragraph 1 for 2025 eligibility period for volunteer service credit program shall run from 1/1/25 to 12/31/25.
Yeah, that should read 1/1/26.
Because 26 is referenced in the next.
Yeah, it's in the ordinance.
So either that first like paragraph should come out, or we would just modify the program to include 2025, which I don't really think is a problem to include it.
no, it's
Is there is there, since the name's Spedder's Mill Fire Rescue?
That was why I originally suggested just 26, but I think administratively, because they are operating as the combined Station 19, this would be sufficient for our staff to be able to process if we did make it eligible for 2025.
Not opposed to it.
So independent of which organization they're part of today.
Correct.
And valid or not.
Correct.
So we can keep it the same. Got
Okay.
any issues?
We're confident in that. Just want to make sure.
Are you comfortable if, yeah, because I mean, it's up to our interpretation.
Yeah.
If somebody submits to us for the reimbursement and they're a member of BERNSTEIN or they're a member of Huntington Valley, which are today operating jointly as Fetters Mill, I think that's sufficient for our staff to process the.
For 2025.
For 25,
Yes, I mean, we talked about both, so. But yeah, I don't see any issue with that.
Okay. So it's been advertised like this, which means we could proceed to approve it.
Right, so then when we bring the program details, the resolution will also reference 2025, and then we can, because essentially it works as a reimbursement, the taxpayer would pay. And then submit the proofs and documentation through Mark, that then once he gives the okay, we would just process a reimbursement check that hits all of the individual tax funds that were paid. So I don't see why we couldn't do that this year, so.
Just one point, that there's a requirement that it's gotta get sent to the state fire commissioner's office for final approval, so I don't know how long that process takes.
True. So I guess we can try to make it ready for 2025, provided that the other administrative processes fall into place in time. Which that would be fire commissioners, okay, and the resolution.
Okay. And there's no reason why that would, from a language perspective, again, just thinking about the name.
Shouldn't expect that.
They wouldn't be, okay. Cool, all right, any other questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Anyone on Zoom? All right, since there's no additional questions, I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 784 as described.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 784 as described. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? No opposed? Thank you, commissioners. Motion's passed.
Thank you. Next item on my agenda is to review and consider the fire prevention and property maintenance code updates. So the board authorized advertising an ordinance at the June meeting, which updates the local ordinance for the township's administration of the fire prevention and property maintenance codes. Solicitor Rice's office has prepared the ordinance, which was advertised as prescribed by law. Does anybody have any questions about that ordinance?
Yep.
Anyone from the public? Anyone on Zoom? Okay. Since there are no questions, I would like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 785 as described.
Is there a
Second.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 785 as described. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Excuse me, sorry. Aye.
Any opposed? I don't hear any. Thank you, commissioners. Motion's passed.
Okay. The next item on my agenda is to review and consider zoning hearing board alternate appointment. So as we talked about earlier, we completed a number of interviews with several interested candidates for the vacant Ward 1 Planning Commission position. And through that process, as we've done in the past, we often ask if there are other opportunities that an individual would like to participate in. And we actually identified an individual willing to serve as an alternate on the zoning hearing board. So there's a resolution that I will propose in a moment to appoint Robert Hughes for the board's consideration. So just some more details here. This will be the second alternate position filled, which helps the zoning hearing board, considering it is a 3-member board. So the vacant alternate position was previously held by Tim Weir, but he is now a primary member on the zoning hearing board. Tim had shifted into that position previously held by Ted Middleman before he joined the township staff. The township's zoning ordinance states that appointments to fill vacancies shall be only for the unexpired portion of the term. And this means that Mr. Hughes' appointment will run through March 19th, 2026. Any questions about the zoning hearing board alternate appointment?
I do not.
No. Anyone in the public? Anyone on Zoom? Okay. Since there are no questions, I would like to make a motion to approve resolution number 25-19, which will appoint Robert Hughes as the alternate on the zoning hearing board commencing July 9th, 2025 and ending March 19th, 2026. Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded to approve resolution 25-19 appointing Robert Hughes as an alternate on the zoning hearing board commencing July 9th, 2025 and ending March 19th, 2026. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No opposed. Thank you, commissioners. Motion's passed. Think we'll serve well on there. Liz mechanical and facility maintenance experience.
I absolutely agree, yeah. The next item on my agenda is to review and consider the Building Code Board of Appeals appointment. So in May, we advised that the term for the Building Code Board of Appeals member, Mark Bellamo, was set to expire on July 16th, 2025. So you guys may recall that many references over the years, this board has only ever had to meet once since it was formed. However, it requires a registered plumber to be part of that board, and Mr. Bellamo has indicated his willingness to continue serving in this capacity. Is there any questions about this appointment? No. Any questions from the public? Anybody on Zoom? All right, if there are no questions, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 25-20. This would reappoint Mark Bellamo to a new term on the Building Code Board of Appeals, commencing July 17th, 2025, and ending July 16th, 2030.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded to approve resolution number 2520, reappointing Mark Bellamo to a new term on the Building Code of Appeals as described. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. I see your aye. Thank you, commissioners. Motion's passed.
Excellent. Next, I'd like to review the zoning hearing board agenda and decisions rendered in its past meeting. So the zoning hearing board has two applications on its July agenda. They'll be meeting next Thursday here in the Township Building. The first is application number 25-17. This is the application of Tadas Rusakis of 1062 Sorrel Road.
Guys, this sound is kicked out again.
To reduce the front yard setback from 50 feet to 40.
What was that, Ruth?
I think she just.
No, we lost internet.
Okay, now I can hear you.
Okay.
I'll repeat the last part of that. So application number 25-17 for a construction of a covered front porch seeking a variance to reduce the front yard setback. There was a note here that it's been completed without permits and that this is the third time the applicant has needed relief for projects completed without permits. The second application is application number 25-18. This is the application of Chen Cheng of 2415 Dale Road. They seek a variance to permit a 252 square foot accessory structure where 200 square feet is permitted and a reduction of the side yard setback from 20 feet to 8 feet. This work was also completed without the code office issuing a building permit for a 200 square, or I'm sorry, this work was completed after the code office issued a building permit for a 200 square foot accessory structure, but it does not require a setback relief. The extra square footage triggers the variance need for both the size and the setback. Any questions about either of those applications?
First, they've had 3 infractions already on this.
On different projects.
On different projects, yes.
So what's the penalty on this right now? Just double the permit fees if it's approved by the zoning board?
Double the permit fees, and then they'll have to dig up any foundations, they're gonna have to open up any areas so we can see any beams and connections and those type of building code issues.
So what's the issue where they're not getting it if you've already been there 3 times for the same issue?
We did all the work at the same time.
Oh,
All
so-
in stages. Like we went out for one thing and they were like, oh, you also did that. And then we went out for that thing. We're like, oh, you also did that. So
Gotcha. Okay.
just took us a little bit to see.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Mark D. George, Dale Road. Your second application, 2415.
Yes.
I just want to speak publicly on that. That's a blatant violation that this person did most of the work behind fencing on Saturdays with contractors. A lot of behind the scenes work. And essentially, to the best of my knowledge, did most of it without notifying anyone. I personally had called when I spotted all of this work being done. So I see no reason that the township should be rewarding this variance. It's a blatant override. A 20 foot setback is brought back to 8 feet. It should be moved. It should be dismantled. There's no way that someone should profit from that.
So I would encourage you to participate in the meeting if you feel strongly about that.
Certainly will.
You'll be
Yeah.
given an opportunity to speak.
I will.
if
I just wanted to, since Mr. Canale was talking about the first one, I figured I'd take that opportunity.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to be public about that.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
there is opportunity in the zoning hearing board hearings to also express that publicly.
I
So
will.
again,
Yeah.
if you're able to, you're welcome to participate.
All right, thank you.
And Ted, Jill, just real quick for the board's purpose on this one, you correct me if I'm wrong. Accessory structures, so a shed. Our ordinance used to permit sheds like super close to the property line. We had somebody built like a second home on a property that was a giant shed. So the board modified the zoning ordinance at the time where the square footage of the shed is then a function of, or the setback that is required is a function of the square footage of the shed. So had they followed and put in a shed that was 200 square feet, the 8 foot property setback is permitted. But because it's greater than 200 square feet, then it has to be
In the building envelope.
within the building envelope for the primary principal structure. So the ordinance, I think, is effective for these sorts of situations, and they exceeded the size of what otherwise would have been permitted to be in that location, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Okay, any other questions, anyone on Zoom about applications upcoming? If not, I will read through the decisions rendered in the June meeting. There were 3 decisions. The first was application number 25-14. This was the application of Albert Leloyen of 3391 Philmont Ave, who sought variances to permit a 5 foot high privacy fence and to encroach into the setbacks for an already built parking structure. The fence variance was denied, but the setback variances were granted. Application number 25-15 was the application of Anton and Victoria Kaminsky of 1721 Reading Road, who sought variances to build a deck patio within setbacks in support of the pool. These variances were granted. And finally, application number 25-16. This was the application of Nicole Ninan of 2460 Morgan Run. They sought relief to permit a rear yard deck, which encroached in the rear yard setback. This variance was also granted. Any questions about any of the decisions rendered in the June meeting?
I have one for Ted. So Ted, that first one, 25-14 with the fence. I sat in for Sean way back when they were in front of the zoning hearing board. Will they make them take that fence down or?
Yeah, I think that fence is already down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That brings me to the last agenda item on my report for today, my liaison report. I'm liaison for the zoning hearing board, which I just reported on, and the building code board of appeals, which I mentioned earlier has yet to meet. So that ends my liaison reports and my full report, and I pass it back to President Kurtz.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Blanton. Next, the chair recognizes Commissioner Canale, Chair of the Public Safety Committee. Jeff.
Thank you, President Kurtz. First up on my agenda for this evening is the Civil Service Commission appointment. Right now, member Eugene Conway is set to expire on September 14th, 2025. Staff will reach out to Mr. Conway and see if he's interested in returning in this position, sir. That brings me to Chief Smith. You're up for your report.
Full reports been submitted, however, just some highlights. In June, we did have another month over 1,748 calls for service. Did learn today that we're having one of our officers officially resign from the police department, not under any cloud of suspicion or anything, but 6 years of service. The officers leaving decided that just police work was not for him. Which again, it's better when they come to that decision on their own. So thank him for his Officer Zachary Heckensquiler is resigning after 6 years of service. So looking what he's moving on to. Did have a few burglaries for crimes in the month of June. We do have a suspect developed, and these are burglaries of construction sites, so homes that are being repaired. Seems to be the same person in both of them. So at least one neighboring community had the same type of calls, and we believe it's the same person. So with all these type of things, I was just trying to remind people to be vigilant. If you see anything suspicious, call it in. We're more than happy to go out and rather be nothing than someone sees something and not call, and then we get something like this. Some more thefts again. It has gone on a little bit of a downward trend, but we did have some more thefts that we often have. Again, just lock your car doors, lock your house doors. Again, call on suspicious incidents. Definitely helps us out. Did have some great work by the officers in the month of June. Recovered a couple stolen vehicles. Were able to return them to their owners pretty quickly. Our detectives were able to clear a large fraud case that involved over $20,000 being stolen from a victim through their bank account. We were able to make an arrest in that. The process will be started to get their money back, of course. And they also did make a burglary arrest from a case that's been worked on for the last several months. Did have some citations for soliciting without permit. Also for ignoring our barricades at some of our flooding events we had in the past couple of weeks. My public service announcement of the month is just respect and follow the road closures, please. It does make it very difficult on the officers. We did have an incident recently where, I'll be brutally honest, we didn't completely follow what was expected to be done. That's been addressed, it's been corrected. We have a plan in place to correct that. But again, there's a lot of things that go into play with those, where the officers are getting some other calls and stuff, but we'll certainly do better to make sure those closures go a little bit better in the future. So community events coming up, that we completed. We did have our Pine Road Elementary Station tour for the second year in a row. So the Pine Road does a raffle, and same family won the raffle, so they really liked us last year, wanted to come back. They got to have pizza, hang out with the officers. Got to see our gym. Some of the kids were lifting some weights and stuff. So it was a very good event. We were getting to the police car. Thankfully, no kid pressed the emergency button like the last community event we did, which was good. And I got to see them. It was on a Saturday. It was a good event. We had our second of our Autism Cares Crime Scene Club, which was again very well attended over at the library. We did have to move it due to a holiday, but the third one is coming up in July. That's July 17th will be our third and final one. This was our trial run with Autism Cares, partnering with them. So very great event. And I was very happy on June 30th. We had, it's been a couple of years since we had done it, but we did a coffee and conversations where we invite all the retired officers back. And we had 15 retired officers come back and hang out with their current officers and hang out with their staff at the police department. And it was a great event seeing a lot of the old retired officers. So that's all I have in my full report. If there's anything specific or any specific questions or
Just
concerns.
one quick question on that will be for you, Chief, and Chris combined. With regard to what's going on in Philadelphia with their trash is not getting picked up. I saw that, you have 2 illegal dumpings, say, with trash, caught. Do we have in place for fines or anything like that?
So it would fall under a theft of services for us. So we've had this many times over the years. They'll go to a business's dumpster on a weekend and try and get rid of a lot of construction trash. That's generally what happens with it. Sometimes it is at construction sites too. So we had it along Pine Road, I think a couple months ago as well. That the officers caught people in the act of dumping some trash there. So there are crimes codes violations that we charge them with. I believe they can even technically be charged with littering as well, but there's crimes code violations that we have that we've charged people with. So
Thank you. That answers the question.
I have a question for you. So you mentioned someone resigning. Does that trigger an automatic backfill process, or is that something that will
it'll
determine if you want to backfill that person?
Yeah, so I mean, that it is a needed position at this point, in my opinion. First step of that is to get approval from the Civil Service Commission to post for the opening. I have had preliminary discussions with managers to make sure we're okay to start that. That would be the next step, obviously, is to, attempt to fill that position and get us back up to full staff. So
Scott, there's no active list in place right now?
it expired in May. So.
And I think it's generally okay, consider for better.
Yes,
uses.
yeah, we got to a point on that last
We
list
do.
where we were getting to the point where we were probably no longer comfortable hiring the people left on the list, so it was, like I said, probably better that way.
And overall for the police department, the budget funds is it 27 positions? So we're never in a position where we're carrying anybody extra.
Sure.
So unless there would be specific direction, you were not hired in that position. We would always initiate the process to be able to get back to 26.
So that's what I was wondering, if you have to request it from us, or if it comes up with the budget. So I was just curious.
Because procedurally, it'll be a civil service testing process and all of it there, and then the appointment will be made.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Fire Marshal Shelley.
Good evening, Commissioners. Just real quick, a couple things on my report here. More of a emergency management month this month, or last month, as you can see in my report. Also, the fire investigations have increased due to the hot weather, so a lot of us are working together now on mutual aid. We did do a final alarm test and sprinkler test at the Huntington Valley Skilled Nursing. They were ready to open back up and they found another plumbing leak. So we are still working with them. They pulled the permit, that sewer line and so forth will be getting done, and they're gonna let me know when they're gonna open that back up. We did have we went over the middle school auditorium for the high school graduation.
Bob, just to clarify, so they don't have an active UNO, they can't put people in that building right now until that's resolved.
So that they have one last hurdle to do, and that was the plumbing. And everything was ready to go until they found another clog.
We've got conflicting information.
Oh, I'm sorry. They back up?
Yeah, it's all done.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So it is
My
fixed
fault.
then.
Everything's fixed.
So they can.
So they're back.
Putting people back.
They can come back in.
They can go back in, but I was not aware that they were back.
That's okay. I'll make that phone call.
Bob, please clear all of your comments with Jill. But the staff.
I usually do, to tell you the truth. I know who's
staff, but the building is staffed now, because I actually went by there specifically to look over the last couple of days, and there was.
They were doing a massive cleaning.
Okay, yeah, there was quite a bit of activity. There.
So, okay.
That had to be a huge remediation job from that work.
Yeah. Overmorton Auditorium, when we had the high school graduation, Officer Samuels and I walked through to do some final checkups and communication between the parking managers and so forth. So we're gonna have a meeting next year to address a couple very minor issues. And again, just if there's any questions on the response to the June 16th, as you can see, it was a very busy day in the county. I think, came out pretty well. We had a crew from Illinois and Ohio who love our Wawas. And just wanted to thank, this was a major group effort. Ted, Jill, Mark, Steve, it all worked out, guys, both firehouses. A couple things we need to do an improvement, and we did that tonight. So we're making more progress on that. And we can even, we had a brief after action meeting tonight after the floods, and we have a couple minor things that we can still improve on. So we'll be taking care of that as well.
And Fire Marshal, you also had some other meetings after this.
Yeah, I met with all the high rises and the apartments just to make sure they were back up and running.
And our staff.
And they were staffed. Yeah.
Any other questions for Bob? Nope, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mark, you're up.
These are parents who've been a little busy tonight, so a chance to change. My report has been submitted. It's a joint report between both communities, as everybody's aware. There's been a number of meetings throughout the month that we've been attending and participating in. Just to highlight a couple of them, we're working on the project management of the new fire station. We're looking at some RFPs that are starting to, or that are prepared to go out to different architectural firms. that are out. We're waiting for some of that to come back, and I believe we're gonna start looking at the architectural piece of it, along with the manager and the project manager, and where else is involved with that. As far as training goes, we've been doing a number of joint trainings. In fact, I've mandated to both organizations and both stations that as of September, all training will be joint training. So every night, but one night on one Monday night every month, which is the meeting nights for the Station 19 group. The other three will be mandatory joint training sessions together. Seems to be working out pretty well. We're trying to get people involved in it as much as possible and trying to get them used to working together, which we work together on the fire scene, so training should be much different. The rebranding of the Station 19 apparatus, which is the Hunter Valley pieces over here, is just about complete. I think we're down to all but 2, Ted, on that.
Correct.
Yeah, so we're doing well with that. One of the Bernathen pieces is out for repair. There was a tank issue we had to get done on it, but that is one of the 2 pieces of part of the fleet reduction plan. So once we get that back, that truck will go up for sale with a release date. That's when the new truck comes in. We're trying to keep the 2 engines done and go away. We're gonna have the 1 engine with the fleet coming down, so we can start preparing for the move into the new station when that is ready. Response, I'm sorry, and we also were working with the solicitor's office on the tax rebate ordinance draft and trying to get that out of the way. Sounds like things went well tonight. We caught tail end of that as we were coming in. Just one point on that, I just saw on the news the other night that Hatboro Horsham School District adopted a tax rebate. That's a huge impact. That means a lot of money to people. So we'll have to look into that a little bit and see what they did. Maybe we can approach the school district here and see if they would be interested in something like that as well. Response statistics, again, they're a little bit skewed because as the fire marshal talked about, it was June the 19th, we had the first set of storms. And during the storms, we probably ran anywhere from, I think it was about 15 total calls, but we had
18 total between the 3 days.
Okay. With that said, that makes our numbers come up because of the people are there during that one big event. And every time we get it, like, for instance, a type of structure fire would show 20 people being there. So it kind of messes the numbers up a little bit, but all in all, and again, tonight was a tremendous response effort from both the career and volunteers, particularly the volunteer side. There was a lot of folks out tonight giving us a hand. There was a lot of work to be done. We had a command post set up. We were deploying the resources from there. It really worked out well. And I think tonight alone, we did 14 rescues and probably handled another 5 or 6 emergency calls at the same time. So everybody was busy with that. Again, once we get going, we can't stop to do certain things because we're going from one to the next. We're pulling people out of vehicles out of high water and their lives are threatened. So it makes it a little bit challenging for us to get some of these plans in place that we talked about. So we do our best we can with that, but keep in mind, we have to do life safety things first. That's what the priority is. As far as statistics, I'll give over real quick. For the Bernathen emergency medical calls in Bernathen, there was 10 for the month of June. In Lower Moreland, there was 117. Other medical calls, that could be anywhere out that we do mutual aid, was 76 for a total of 203 EMS calls. That's the busiest amount of calls in a month for probably 5 years that I know of that I've seen. For a total year to date on EMS calls, 1,058. So we're on track again to probably hit that 2,200 to 2,500 per year month benchmark on that. For fire calls for Bernathen Fire Company, 9 into Bernathen, 38 into Lower Moreland, 4 other calls for a total of 51 calls for the month and year to date 237. And in the Huntington Valley from the Station 19 stats, they were out for 44 times in Lower Moreland. Bernathen 5, 1 other outside call, a total of 50 calls for the month, and they are at 256 calls for the year. Just to highlight one thing on these emergency responses we talked about, which is very, very important. We saw an increase in carbon monoxide alarms. That's when the power goes out. That's when those calls started to come in. That tells us people are using generators and they're using them improperly because if they're going and running them and they're setting off inside houses, that means the fumes are coming inside the house. That's a very serious situation. It's not only serious, it's deadly. So we caution anybody that's using the generators, please use them properly. Please use them in well-ventilated spaces and make sure they're not near openings coming into the homes. We saw that increase and it triggers off a red flag for us. So we want to make sure everybody's aware of that. And that concludes my report.
Any questions for Mark? Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
Thank you. That takes me into my liaison reports. My first report is civil service. We had no meetings, but it sounds like we will be shortly. Thanks, Scott. Second one is the Huntington Valley Library. The Library Board of Trustees has started the process of updating their strategic plan. They look forward to working with commissioners and the community for their input. Huntington Valley Library has 6,968 Lower Moreland residents with library cards and 54,838 physical items available to borrow. They also have a wide variety of online resources. The library has a new caregiver support group. The first meeting is Tuesday, July 15th at 7 p.m. The program is in partnership with Home Instead, Paul's Run, and Artist Senior Living in Huntington Valley. They will meet monthly. Summer learning is well underway with over 300 people registering to take part in the Reading Challenge. Please see the website for more information and to review all the upcoming events. Save the date, Saturday, August 16th, from noon to 4 p.m. The library will have the third annual For the Books Mini Golf fundraiser in the library. Always a good time if you want to sponsor all. That's all I have. Back to you, President Kurtz.
Thank you, Commissioner Canale. Next, the chair recognizes Commissioner Housen. Ruth, Chair of Public Property Committee. Can you hear us?
Oh, Ruth is
Your
off.
sound.
Yeah, she's muted.
Your sound is off, Ruth.
Can she unmute?
Looks like she's having trouble.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sounds great.
Sorry about that. I have to switch back and forth because I only have one device. The first item is the Historic Architectural Review Board. We had 2 applications this month. The application of Max Blank, 2455 Huntington Pike. He's the one who's opening up the new butcher shop, which is very exciting. I went and tried it out. Excellent. It is a very nice sign, very well keeping with our township, and the Harbor Board approved this application as presented. The next application is for a replacement of the Everest Indian Cuisine up by, up Huntington Pike by Be Well. And it's now going to be Babari, Nepali, and Indian cuisine. Their colors are really interesting, purple, green, and orange. The board approved this application as presented as well. Does anybody have any questions? Did you all look at the pictures?
They look good.
They look great, Ruth.
Yeah, I thought they looked really good. So we're very happy about that. My next item is the sewer report.
Actually, before
I'm
you, we need to have the board consider the certificates of appropriateness by the way.
Okay.
Why? No, I'm just kidding. That'd be great. I apologize. I moved on. Okay. So can we do them both at the same time?
Sure. Do we need public comment first?
Sure.
Yeah, open it up for the public, Ruth, please.
Okay, I'm sorry. Are there any questions from the public or the other commissioners?
Nope.
No,
Let's
not
do
from
it.
us. Anyone online there, Leah? No, Leah said no.
Okay. I make a motion to approve the applications 2503 and 2505.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded to approve applications 2503 and 2505 from the Historic Review Board meeting that was held last night, approving their signs as described by Commissioner Housen. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed? Thank you, Commissioner Housen.
Okay. This month was a kind of exciting month for the sewer department because of all the power outages and how they had to run some on generators and some on pumps. So it was It was exciting. I'm sure they were working 24/7. I'm sorry, what? Can you all hear me?
You cut out, we got you again.
Can you hear me now? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. There have been some continuing updates that they will continue to do all the time. We're going to go over they went over the recent, I'm sorry, guys, I&I study, which is infiltration, to look and see where there's infiltration, and we're working on cleaning those up, cleaning and relining lines that need to be relined. Okay. Also, the Chapel Hill clarifier upgrade, the parts are currently being ordered, so completion will be in late 2025. Can you all still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. My next liaison is Lower Moreland Township Authority. We had a meeting last Wednesday where the main item that's come in is that the Philadelphia Water Department is saying that our water services agreement is due for negotiation. And I guess that process is going to get started soon. That's all we know as of this point. We just got their letter. That completes my agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Housen. Our agenda items are concluded this evening. Next, we will take public participation comments on non-agenda items.
There's no
addressing traffic and I'd like to just run by the board here, an ongoing problem. And I've often said it's the same problem, different decade. And that is closures that happen on Red Line Road essentially. And the traffic gets diverted, directed, the traffic abounds like nobody's business. Violations, stop sign violations, speeding. It's a liability, it's a danger for the township. We've had 3 events over the last 2 months. You're aware of our flooding. And I know 1 or 2 of the commissioners have seen the footage of the traffic in our neighborhood. 1,000 cars. They come in unsupervised. The very first one would happen 2 months ago. Happened in the morning. School children on our street play soccer, waiting for the school bus. We had traffic coming down at 60 miles an hour. And these kids were running. I've witnessed accidents, and it just goes unchecked and unaddressed by the township. We need some help. It's as simple as that. It just goes on, and we get assistance, but it always falls back to non-compliance. The traffic's being directed into a residential neighborhood when it shouldn't be. It's as simple as that. They should be directed onto a state road and not put into a residential neighborhood. If that's impossible to do, which it seems to me that it's that you've been unable to do it. If that's the case, I want police protection in the neighborhood in terms of safety. You owe it to the residents to control it in some way. And it just goes on. And please help.
So, Mr. George, regarding what you're saying, is we've had it addressed numerous times before. I know the chief's worked on a plan to devise it. Regarding the speeding through the neighborhoods during these events,
Yeah,
it's really not that possible due to the amount of traffic flowing through there. Back on 619, when we had the tree under the car on Red Line Road,
right.
there was no way to divert that traffic off Dale Road on going eastbound on Red Line.
Okay.
Same thing going the other way. Road was completely blocked with people trapped in a vehicle. There was no good place to divert there. Same thing going up to High Road. The guys are doing what they can do. But during an emergency situation where the township is getting hammered by calls and everything else, priority first is life safety, then directing traffic. And that's what it has to be.
I don't accept that from you one bit.
I don't know what to tell you that.
Well, but I'll tell you what.
You should always take precedent over traffic. You disagree with that?
I do, you need to listen to your residents. You have to advocate for me, the resident. You took an oath when you took this job over, that you will advocate for the residents.
Are you asking, I'm sorry,
You're not
are you asking
doing-
for police? Police. To enforce the violations during
What is, my hat's off the force paper, how come you didn't bring that up?
So one of our with live wires on it, it's right there. My focus is not on the traffic control and diverting it away from the street so it doesn't impact the neighborhoods. It's dealing with the people that are trapped in the vehicle and making sure that they make it out.
Okay.
That's the number one priority. Now with barricades, they are placed once the weather subsides to direct that traffic. The police, fire department, fire police need to respond to their emergencies and handle the emergencies first. Traffic control in a neighborhood with just vehicles coming through is secondary to life safety.
Well, so you've got to do a better job. All you're doing is battling it. You're not listening. You're not listening.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. B. George.
Okay.
Mr. D. George. Anyone else? Anyone on Zoom? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Commissioner, Joe, with all due respect to your position in the fire department, I get what you're saying about public safety first. But probably about 2 years ago, myself and Mr. George at the time had a meeting with Chief Scarrato and Officer Smith at the time, just about the traffic problem, the diverting the traffic onto residential streets. There was a plan put in place. Okay, Township Manager Hoffman knew about it. President Kurtz knew about it. Okay, Public Works always delivers the barricades where necessary. Sometimes they put them up. Sometimes they're there to prevent when a storm does come in. I get it that public safety is first, but when you think that you have communication within the township and then it just breaks because every flooding event is the first flooding event in Lower Moreland, and that's just not true. We've had many, many flooding events, and I get it, Joe. There was plenty of trees down. There was a tree down on Walsh Road. There was a tree down on Red Lion Road. I thought at the time the police did an excellent job because they put a car at Red Lion and Philmont not to allow traffic to come up Red Lion Road. Okay, the traffic that did get through came through Kirk and they went down Red Lion Road. And there was a big backup on Philmont Avenue. I get it with the traffic in the township. But when you allow that much traffic on a residential street, that becomes a safety factor and it becomes a quality of life issue that the township residents do not deserve. I get where you're coming from, but you have to understand that we are taxpayers. And when we think that we have a plan in place and communication is broken because it's like the first storm that ever occurred in Lower Moreland, it's very frustrating to the people that actually are affected by this traffic volume that comes down the street. So, I mean, I did send film to Denise Kurtz on this last one, also to Sean Blanton. You know, Joe, it's just a matter of communication. That's all it is. And if we have better communication in the township, I think it will work. And the last time, Joe, the last time it was just a bad communication. And I did talk to the chief about it, and he assured us that it'll improve. And it was just a communication thing, but the residential people are the ones that are affected by it.
I understand that wholeheartedly, Chuck, and I know the township wants to work with you, the first responders, police, fire, public works, EMS, to get this satisfied for all of our residents. And they do it as soon as they're able to do it and have the personnel available to do that, is what I see typically. And I understand the traffic concerns. Today, in my neighborhood on my street, I was basically on an island up there. We have one vehicle submerged in 5 feet of water, another intersection out, and County Line Road was underwater. During those first 45 minutes to an hour, the crews need to respond to the emergencies going on. Then they can focus on shutting down the rest. Hopefully with the gates being put in on Philmont Avenue, that will take care of some of the issue and alleviate it, we hope, and allow more personnel. Again, it's a plan, and hopefully we'll be able to enact it well and work to improve it continuously. I'm in agreement with you.
Thank you.
Is some of the issue the timing of these storms that come in where Public Works is finishing their day and are up the opposite end of the township? Because I'm down by Chuck and I had a gas tanker, legit 18-wheeler, roll down Packer Ave going from Welsh right into Moreland Road. And is it a timing issue as well with getting Public Works there? Is that part of the issue?
Oh, to an extent, every individual storm and the emergency calls that go along with that storm are unique instances. So for the one that happened last, was that Tuesday?
Mm-hmm.
So last Tuesday, the Public Works first dealt with flooding up on Eaton Road. Yeah. So that was the first closure that they dealt with. They had already stayed over for an hour on their normal schedule. So once that situation was under control, Public Works delivered the barricades per the plan that I drafted on the board's behalf into the locations where they're supposed to go. And remember, there's 2 different goals that we have with that plan. The first is the barricades that set up kind of your last line of defense before somebody drives into floodwaters, which is the thing that we're trying to prevent from happening so that our first responders don't have to follow people into that. Those barricades are going to be replaced by the floodgates, which are now, like, we've received them. So Public Works is going through the installation process shortly. So that part will be an improvement. The other component is trying to battle free will. So we put up signs at Pine and Red Lion as when there's flooding down at Philmont and Red Lion, we put up the sign at Pine to inform people the road is closed ahead. There's then another sign that you have to pass that is near High. Again, road is closed. And then there's curb. Well, and then because each of the residential streets gets a sign that says like local traffic only, Dale Road, return to Pine Road. So each of those go up so that as much as we're able to kind of policy wise deal with, we're really trying to avoid having to have an individual officer that is there, because if you're driving by the sign, you're getting the notice of here's exactly what is ahead of you. And for you to end up having to either do a U-turn down at the bottom, or if you try to turn onto one of the roads that is posted local traffic only, you are making an active decision reading those signs to not follow what's being said. Because the other component of this is that the officers who eventually responded on Red Lion Road that evening, they were first responding to 3 major intersections that had lost power and were connecting generators to be able to get those up and running again. But our first officer was up onto Red Lion Road within what, 10 minutes of the
15 minutes, yeah.
within 15 minutes. So at that point, the issue that the chief is referring to is that the orientation of the signs informing people about local traffic only go back to Pine, instead of being in the entrance to Dale and I don't know about Kirk and High, they were instead out on Red Lion. So that's the thing that outside of public works control and outside of the chief having communicated this to the officers, just they ended up almost there, but not quite in the right spot. We then had another officer respond at Pine and Red Lion. So we now have, because things have otherwise calmed down around town, we now have officers that are able to start making either addressing cars that are going around or helping guide people. And I think some of the confusion came from specifically at the Red Lion and Dale intersection, not necessarily being waved in, but I think the ability to perceive what they were doing was because the body cam video shows lots of people doing U-turns. But also there are people that do turn into Dale Road. And I saw the video that Mr. McDade sent to Denise of several slow moving vehicles going in both directions constantly on Dale Road. So those are the things that presented themselves. And then I think with the appropriate orientation of those signs, you're better set up for, there's going to be times where we can have officers there and there's going to be times that we can't. But the best that I think we can do is give people the information necessary to make decisions. And sometimes they're going to make the right one and sometimes they're not. And we do not have the ability to close down any of our public roads in these instances, because to Commissioner Canelli's points, there's times where the reason for the closure just isn't that floodwaters from upstream finally ended up on Red Lion Road and closed Philmont Avenue. Sometimes it's going to be because there's live wires down on an individual vehicle and there's a person in the car. So that is where some of the individuality of these instances comes from. But I think the policy itself is sound. The reiteration of that after the neighbors had met with Chief Scarrato and at the time Lieutenant Smith, of what that is supposed to be, reiterating that to our officers again now. I don't know what else we can recommend be done in these individual instances, because there are going to be times where there are other emergency responses necessary. So that's how we've approached it as a staff. It's how, when we have the storm forecasted, it's how we're texting to make sure that Public Works was available to get them out, that the officers who were on for that day should be aware of that plan. And so that's kind of where we are on the staff level for it. And I don't know what else to suggest.
Thank you, Manager Huff.
Yeah, the only comment that I'll make on this, and I want to address a comment that I heard, was that, you know, there was a plan and we're not following the plan. I think I sympathize with the residents that are on Dow Road, you know, because it's just a bad situation. You have Red Line Road there, you have, and Chris, the word that I took out of everything that you said was free will, is that despite signs and barricades, I see people get out of cars and move barricades and purposely drive through, you know, deep flood, right? And that is a very difficult thing to control, especially when you're dealing with greater emergencies that are happening in the surrounding area that the emergency services team is already extremely tasked at that point to be able to get things done. And, you know, the only comment that I would make is that once we have these other floodgates up, perhaps it'll get better, and maybe that's a time to look at our plan. And if we're following the plan, maybe that's all that we can do at this point in time, unless there's some other suggestions. But it sounds like we're doing is what can be done at this point in time to make the situation better. And I respect your comments. I respect Mr. McDade's comments. I know that it's a very difficult situation. And if there's something more that can be done, I think everybody up here would be willing to listen to that and to be specific rather than generalities, to say, okay, we said we were going to do this and now traffic's there, we're not doing this. It sounds like we're doing quite a bit, and maybe we just can't do anything more than what we can during these situations.
So if I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, these floodgates, they're not automatic. They don't just go down and set themselves. We have to send personnel out there to manually set the floodgates where we want them. So with that being said, we could, even with floodgates, we could run into the same issue because we don't have the personnel available, because the people that are assigned to do that are also taking care of emergency situations. So it seems like floodgates or not, it's going to be an issue. So we have to try to see what personnel we have again, you don't know what time of the day the floods are going to happen, but.
I mean, if you go around barricades, is that a traffic offense?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go for it.
So yeah, a couple things with the flood barricades, the good news with them is they can't be moved by a person. So our current barricades we use, that's the problem we always run into is people move them on their own. Cars come up to them, once one car moves them, then they're all following each other and it becomes chaos. So the good news with barricades is, or the flood arms is they can't be moved. We can lock them in place. I believe Steve can correct me if I'm wrong, if a car ran into it, it would probably break. I think they're designed to break off, but you can't move them. That's the good news. Some of the problems with this last one was everything happened at 5 o'clock. I think everybody here knows what traffic is like at 5 o'clock in Lower Moreland. And then when the cars weren't following the signs that we had in place, although some were placed wrong, as I acknowledged, it created so much traffic that the officers were kind of hampered in what they could do. And the answer to the other part of the question is yes, we did actually, the first officer got the first car that went around all 3 barricades and all 3 signs that said road closed. And while he was citing that one, multiple other cars kept coming down the road and coming down the road and coming down the road. So they could only deal with one car at a time, got their information, moved them along, and then started trying to direct the cars.
Can we put a camera up where the floodgate is and just same thing we do with the school buses? Everybody that goes through it, we send a citation.
If we park a school bus there.
Yeah.
The law for the school bus was very specifically designed for that. There is not a floodgate.
Or
notice.
It's like a red light camera. The state has to approve red light cameras.
Right.
They would have to approve you putting something like that up, so.
And we're not eligible.
And then we wouldn't be eligible. We're not eligible for the red light cameras.
Right.
Unfortunately.
So it's fortunate.
It is a violation. We
It's
did cite
ridiculous.
people.
Like we don't question any of the challenge of it, the frustration. I think as a staff, I'll speak for all of us. We do not agree that we should be closing public roads that officers may be able to divert people to in these individual instances. But we certainly understand that Red Lion Road is a unique instance. This is in the memo that I forwarded to all of you on Friday from last year. Route 63 isn't supposed to be Red Lion Road. It is. So it is, there's the greater possibility of larger trucks and the volume of traffic utilizing that because the Woodhaven Road extension didn't happen. But that's a whole other can of worms that no one is prepared to talk about. But all of these things build upon one another because there really could be a lesser volume of traffic on Red Lion if Route 63 went a different way through town. Once that happens, now you've got the downhill, you've got the rail crossing, you've got the flooding on Philmont Avenue, all of these things building upon one another, and you have 3 residential streets on your way to all of that give you a chance to turn around. If people are going to go down to the new floodgate and turn around, they're going to have to go through a private business for that turn. That private business is not going to want that to happen, but that is what the policy and the location of that floodgate is going to require. How do we view that in relation to as where every iteration of this is imperfect as you're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of cars in a quick period of time when they cannot go any further, despite the notice telling you way back at Pine Road, turn here, it's all going to be closed ahead. And because people need to get out of their neighborhood, we can't close the access into it. Because one of your ways to deal with it would be, could you put a gate at Pine and Red Lion? But what about everyone who needs to get out who lives there? That's not an option available to us. So again, there's always going to be these imperfect challenges that present themselves because of how unique of a location it is. And Dale Road, even probably more than Kirk and High, is because it's the final opportunity to turn around, is going to be the one that presents your greatest scale of challenge.
So, hey, Chris, we have volunteers in the community for zoning hearing board and other boards and committees. Am I crazy to think we get 5 residents or volunteers, right, that would be trained and deemed qualified to set these floodgates at each location that we have them? I think there's 10 or 11 locations. If we get 5 volunteers, and then when we know they're needed, there's some kind of alert or something, we can get one of the 5 to go actually set these, or does this have to be a full-time staffed employee that actually sets the floodgate? I'm trying to think of solutions on how to react quicker.
Have the ability in-house to set the floodgate in place, because again, that's not changing the traffic pattern. That is the last line of defense before somebody drives into it. And I don't think that is what we're talking about being a problem tonight. So I don't think that part is necessary.
How long does it take to drop a gate? A minute?
Yeah. It's just sometimes getting to it.
The issue is, for people that are in cars, don't follow the sign, and they end up in your neighborhood.
But building on that idea, is there a volunteer force that we could train and activate to help make sure barricades stay where they're supposed to stay? So that other services, like police officers and emergency services, can go do the things that they really need to do. So
let's workshop that idea not here.
Yeah, I understand.
I have some major liability concerns of utilizing emergency
situation.
That strikes me as a society I wish I lived in, but we don't.
It's a bad situation.
Sure.
Yeah, and it works its way down too. Like some of the first closures we got that day were, of course, on the upper end of the township, and then as you also are dealing with those, it's now starting to flood on the lower. They just, and that's difficult to get to them too.
Yeah.
There's not a direct route, like they can't take Philmont Avenue to get to Red Line to close it. They have to go on the same road everybody else is going, which is Pine Road.
And just depending on the time of the storm, there could be anywhere from 3 to 7 officers.
Yeah.
Does it make sense? Like, so if the right turnaround spot is at Pine Road, and because the risk isn't just a neighborhood risk, it's people that are continuing to come down. I mean, is there an opportunity for some type of traffic safety response that could be positioned, because we know that's a bad road that we could somehow position, maybe it's through training additional volunteers or something that could be positioned further up that is basically stopping traffic at Pine Road, where there's an easy turnaround that they would do during another emergency event. Say, unless someone says, yeah, I live down there, then they make the turn there. We're just actively trying to manage, and that would also help with people getting into the flood zone. Is that an opportunity?
So we did, so the first officer went down the road to check all the barricades and got to the end. And the second officer did come and direct them there. What the officer said as a third officer came in is all the cars were just going down Pine Road to Welsh and then coming right down High Road because they know
So
the way around
they
it.
could get around.
And then they went to Pine Road to Kirk and then came around that, and then we're still spilling out towards that officer. Even though the other officer at Pine Road told him there should be no cars coming down, no, I'm not letting anybody by, but they were still bypassing other ways. So, yeah, it was not perfect. It was an absolute mess that day. It really was.
It was rushed out too, but I think we all can sympathize with the residents and we sympathize with all of you, putting yourselves in your life on the line. I think Commissioner Canale, and we saw in our public safety reports too, about the different situations that were occurring, and we're doing the best we can, and we'll continue to work on this together. And any other comments?
Nope.
Sounds good.
Okay, hearing none, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Bye all.
Bye, Ruth. Stay safe out there.